July 17th, 2023, regular meeting of the City of Traverse City's Commission. I want to welcome everyone in the audience that's joining us tonight, and also those who are at home watching. We'd like to begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. If any of you have looked at our agenda, we have a very lengthy and busy agenda tonight. As we interact with one another tonight, may we do so with respect, dignity, and patience, and charity with each other. So with that, I'm going to ask my wingman over here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, that had a little bit of volume to it. I love it. Thank you. So, roll call, please.
Commissioner Stanley? Here. Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Colbert? Here. Commissioner Wilson?
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow? Here. Commissioner Werner?
Here.
Mayor?
Here. Okay, we have announcements from the interim city manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I do have a few this evening. First, as it's no surprise, I think to the Commission and many in this room, that we have some very great people that work at the city, and I'm going to put her on the spot. And can you come up to the podium for just a moment? Yeah.
Tough luck.
So for those who do not know, this is our city assessor, Polly Cairns, and she deserves a congratulations on getting a perfect score on our state audit of minimum assessing requirements. So this is a great accomplishment for her and her team. I'm not really sure how many communities actually get perfect scores, but congratulations to our assessing department.
I appreciate that. My staff worked very hard on this. So it's a lot of paperwork.
Thank you, Polly.
Thanks.
Okay, I do want to take a moment, too, to address one of the bigger issues going on in the community as well. As everybody knows, the challenges of housing affordability and availability, or the housing crisis, as some have labeled it, has long been discussed in Traverse City. However, there is a heightened level of consternation in the community due in part to the recommendations recently passed to the City Commission from the Planning Commission. What I want to address briefly is the commentary that these proposed changes are being rushed, that public comment is being ignored, and that the proposed changes are a done deal or will be ramrodded through the City Commission process. In June 2008, 15 years ago, the City Commission unanimously directed the implementation of the recommendations found in the Regulatory Framework for Workforce Housing in Traverse City document. It's in this report that you will see some of the very same types of zoning proposals that are currently being discussed. Zoning as a tool to address housing needs in this community is not new. Regarding public comment, I can say for one, and I know it's true for many, many others, that I have read, and many others have read, every single anti-email that has been received and every for comment that has been received in our inboxes. Public comment is data that is used during the thoughtful and complete analysis of policy, data that is currently being used. I think it's fair to say that everyone up here appreciates the complexity of the proposed zoning changes and empathize with some of the concerns, but also the hope being expressed that what is proposed can have a positive impact on the housing challenges being faced in this community. I think it is also fair to say that there is a desire to continue the analysis of what has been proposed and to develop a policy direction that serves the long-term interests of this community. So next steps. We're currently planning to set aside the August 28th study session to continue the City Commission's analysis of the zoning recommendations as forwarded by the Planning Commission. Absolutely no formal action will be taken at this meeting, although I do hope that we'll receive some direction from the City Commission on where we want to take this conversation next. In closing, I would encourage the community to stay informed as this policy discussion proceeds, but I'd also ask that you not get caught up in the misinformation and the unfortunate characterizations that are being floated throughout this community, of the people working very hard through this extremely complex social, economic, and environmental issue. So thank you very much for giving me a moment to address that. Last but not least, we do have an item on the consent calendar that I was asked to provide a little more context to. If there is an issue or a request for further discussion, we can always pull it. This has to do with the amendment to the resolution banning alcohol in city parks. We are recommending, after working and talking with the city's police department and public safety, fire as well, and the city attorney's office, we are recommending the expansion of that ban to include the men's and women's trail, basically that whole park area over there. Essentially what this is about is providing another tool to the police department to help support behavioral changes over there as needed. We're just trying to make sure our officers and our first responders are equipped with every tool that they have available, while making sure that we are staying within the guidance that has come out of recent court decisions. So if there's any further discussion or questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. With that, announcements from the Deputy City Clerk, please.
The meetings this week are the Board of Tax Review will meet on Tuesday, July 18th at 1 p.m. in the training room. The Planning Commission will meet this Tuesday, July 18th at 7 p.m. in the Commission chambers. The Arts Commission will meet this Wednesday, July 19th at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room. The Commons Joint Planning Commission will meet Wednesday, July 19th at 5:15 in the training room. And the Downtown Development Authority will meet this Friday, July 21st at 9 a.m. in the Commission chambers. Of course, we're always looking for people to apply for boards and commissions with expiring terms and vacancies. Several boards that we have are Local Officers Compensation Commission, Human Rights Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Review, Coast Guard City Committee, Planning Commission, just to name a few. Community updates. Again, nominating packets for the seats of mayor and city commission are available for pickup at the city clerk's office, and the filing deadline is July 25th at 4 p.m. And a reminder that the city issues a weekly e-newsletter, the Bay Brief, that covers the latest scoop on city initiatives and programs. To subscribe, visit traversitymi.gov/contact/e-newsletter.html.
Good, thank you. Okay, we got a presentation we get to make tonight. We have the get to make tonight, and we're privileged to be able to do so. I would ask that Ms. Jen Loop, who is the chair of the Traverse City Human Rights Commission, and Ms. Kathy Sanders joining me at the podium, please. First of all, for the benefit of the public and for those who may sometimes not remember, I'm going to have our chair please give an introduction of what the Sarah Hardy Award, Humanitarian Award, is about. Please.
Hi, I'm Jen Loop. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Commission of Traverse City. The Human Rights Commission, it exists to exemplify the ideals of human dignity, to advocate and to educate. And every year we give out an annual award. We seek and accept nominations from anyone within the city and the surrounding area for people who exemplify humanitarian ideals. The Human Rights Commission votes on a recipient each year, and this year we are honoring Kathy Sanders.
I know if you read the news release that came out probably about a week and a half ago, but I also heard it tonight. This lady's busy, very, very busy. She's a very active participant in the before, during, and after incarceration program that works with our inmates in the jail and once they get out of the jail so they don't return. She happens to be an integral member of the St. Francis Justice and Peace Commission, which is also a part of SALT now, so that's part of that. She's very active in that. She's helped to cook meals on numerous occasions and for different church organizations that for Safe Harbor. I think I've been there for one of the meals you cooked when I was volunteering one night. I'm going to make sure I go whenever she's there, so it works out pretty good. She's also a member of the Maritime Heritage Alliance, so she likes to sail ships, and I think she's probably even remodeled a few of them in her time. And she's also a part of the South Fox Lighthouse Preservation Program. I probably didn't get that name right. And her husband says he never sees her, so I mean, she's gone or whatever, or when she's home, she's on her computer getting things right. But she was fully nominated. She was suggested, nominated, and received this reward for her many, many contributions. So with that, Ms. Sanders, I want to present this award to you. The City of Traverse City Human Rights Commission. It is with great pleasure that the Sarah Hardy Humanitarian Award is presented to Kathy Sanders in recognition of significant contributions to human rights in the Grand Traverse area 2023, signed by myself. Thank you, Kathy. Somebody needs to have a picture. Somebody will hold his camera, because without him, she can't make things happen. So there you go. Let's go ahead and get up here. You can do that. So.
Do you want to say?
Whoa. You think you're done? No. She has a short little statement that she will make. If she makes the same statement, you better get ready, folks. It's going to be a goodie. So, thank you.
I'm truly humbled by this award. The people that have come before me, Sarah Hardy and all the other recipients up to this point, just have done amazing things, and their amazing work, along with many that are here, has made Traverse City the fantastic community that it is. And what makes a community great is not the work of one single person, you know, at a point in time. It really takes the collaboration of everybody working together, and sometimes even small acts can really make a difference. So some of you may have heard the story of the starfish. And there's a man walking along the beach, and it's filled with thousands of starfish that have washed ashore with the tide. And he comes across a young girl who is bending down and tossing the starfish back into the water. He's surprised by her effort and says, "Young lady, there are miles and miles of beach and thousands of starfish. You can't possibly make a difference." And the young girl bends down and tosses another starfish into the sea. She turns to him and says, "It made a difference for that one." So I will leave some of these little packets with the starfish out in the lobby. Feel free to take them. And attached to it is a URL with ideas of how each one of you can make a difference, how you can get involved. We have wonderful nonprofits and groups in this community that are changing lives every day. And I challenge everyone here to make that difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanders. We have another presentation we want to make tonight. This will probably fall off and mess up the whole meeting. Oh, gosh, we'll have to go home early. Okay. Ms. Hill, would you please come up here to the podium? Yes, ma'am. For folks that don't know it, Ms. Hill is ending her career at the end of this month. We have a couple of special things for this. We have a special mayoral tribute to Penny Hill we'd like to give upon her retirement. Let it be known that it is an honor to recognize Penny Hill for her impressive 35-year career in local Michigan government, which began in the Upper Peninsula and is coming to a close down here in Traverse City. Ms. Hill began her career in 1988 in the city of Bessemer? Bessemer. Excuse me, it's one of those UP names. At the very western end of the Upper Peninsula. While there, she served in various roles for 13 years. In 2001, she returned to her hometown of Okanagan. Look, it took me forever to get Charleroi right. So, where she grew up and proudly graduated from Okanagan Area High School and served as Okanagan Village Manager until 2008. To her wise decision, she then left the UP and moved south of the Mackinac Bridge to serve as Village Manager in the village of Kalkaska. In 2014, she became Traverse City's Assistant City Manager, and we've been honored to work with her every day since. During her tenure in Traverse City, Ms. Hill has overseen numerous projects and initiatives. She has served as staff liaisons to the Traverse Heights Neighborhood Association, staff liaisons to the Human Rights Commission, and managed the Staff Transportation Committee. Ms. Hill has managed the historic Carnegie Building, which houses local nonprofits and houses the city's Con Foster Museum collection. For many years, within the preview of the Native American Graves Protection and Reparation Act, she helped facilitate the reparation of funerary and sacred objects that have been in the Con Foster Museum collection, which includes what'd you say? Repatriation, the remains of 2 souls to the St. Sue Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. Earlier this year, Ms. Hill was awarded the Outstanding Assistant Award from the Michigan Municipal Executives due to her many achievements made during her tenure here and her many years of working in local government. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed in recognition of Penny Hill for her contributions to the communities in which she has served, and in particular, the city of Traverse City during her expansive 35-year career. May the entire Traverse City region know of our appreciation to her service to the community and our great city on this 17th day of July, 2023. Of our appreciation for your many years of service to the city, but most importantly, your many years in local government here in Michigan. This local government is where the rubber does meet the road, folks, and you've had to deal with a lot of rubber. So there you go. We thank you.
Thank you.
Say a couple words. If you like.
I have to show this because it is just beautiful.
Ooh, that is beautiful.
Isn't that pretty? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I have to say it has been an honor and very humbling to work in local government because you do meet some and interact with some wonderful, wonderful people. Many of them are here today. And it has been wonderful experience for me. 35 years is a long time. I've had a wide variety of experiences. Who knew I'd be involved in Native American grave repatriation? But it's very rewarding. The whole experience in government is rewarding. So I would encourage anybody who is remotely interested, just come and see what it's all about. Take part in the Citizen Academy. It's a great thing. And I would like to give a shout out right now to my strongest supporter, my husband Mel, who's here today. He's been very supporting and understanding of my not being home on Monday night for 9 years. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the next chapter.
Thank you, Penny.
Consent calendar, please. She's going to speed read, folks, so pay attention.
More like, please give me some grace, I may stumble over some words.
I do that all the time.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. 1, consideration of approving the minutes of June 26, 2023 and July 10, 2023 meetings of the City Commission. 2, consideration of referring a request from Commissioner Tim Werner for the City Commission to adopt a building electrification policy to the August 7, 2023 meeting. 3, consideration of approving adjustments to the recognized boundaries for the base of Old Mission, Boom, Neighborhood Association. 4, consideration of amending the City Commission resolution recognizing neighborhood associations to recognize Indian Woods neighborhood. 5, consideration of amending the resolution which prescribes the parks where alcohol is banned to include the men's and women's trail. 6, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement with the State of Michigan for it to provide full reimbursement in connection with the COVID in the wastewater analysis project, and consideration of authorizing an amendment to the related consultant agreement to provide all sample collection, lab analysis, lab supplies, and reporting services to meet the grant requirements for the period of October 1st, 2023 through July 2024. 7, consideration of authorizing an out-of-scope agreement for repairs to the wastewater treatment plant's membrane bioreactor chemical feed and HVAC system with the cost to be shared with the township partners as provided by the master sewer agreement. 8, consideration of authorizing a funding agreement with Preserve Hickory to formalize the city's acceptance of its donation of $29,000 to cover the cost of snowmaking equipment at Hickory Hills Recreation and $5,000 for ski patrol supplies, and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the snowmaking equipment. An item of note on this item, the motion in the packet needs to be amended to include that the interim city manager be authorized to issue a purchase order to the snow machines for the snowmaking equipment in the amount not to exceed $29,000. Number 9, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for professional legal services associated with tax appeals, which would extend the agreement to include the 2023-2024 fiscal year, with all other terms to remain the same. 10, consideration of authorizing an agreement with the Downtown Development Authority, providing that it will cover $68,495 of the $970,850 agreement for garbage collection services within the Downtown Development Authority District, and consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for garbage collection services to extend the agreement by a year. 11, consideration of authorizing an underground license agreement which would allow for the installation of underground communication lines in the right-of-way of Arrow Park Drive as requested by NV Real Estate LLC. Consideration of authorizing a 5-year extension to the agreement with LEA for its provision of services associated with the live video streaming, broadcasting, and archiving of meetings. 13, consideration of amending the agreement for aerial imaging services to modify the year in which services must be provided from fiscal year 2022-2023 to 2023-2024. 14, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing the confirming purchase order for street sweeper repairs. 15, consideration of authorizing 3 purchase orders for water treatment plant chemical supplies for fiscal year 2023-2024. 16, consideration of authorizing a blank purchase order in the amount of $50,000 for asphalt on an as-needed basis. 17, consideration of declaring police department duty weapon surplus so it may be sold at appraised value and provided to retired police chief Jeffrey O'Brien. 18, introduction of final report from Fire EMS Primary Transport Ad Hoc Committee and referring the report to the July 24th, 2023 meeting. 19, consideration of referring the report from the City Commission Beitner Properties Ad Hoc Committee to the August 14th, 2023 study session. 20, consideration of authorizing a payment for the removal and disposal of hazardous soil in connection with 100 block East Front Street sanitary sewer relocation project along the Boardman River with the city to be reimbursed by the Downtown Development Authority through its Brownfield Redevelopment Grant. 21, consideration of scheduling a public hearing regarding budget amendments for fiscal year 2022-2023 for August 7th, 2023. 22, consideration of authorizing the annual amendment to the contract for maintenance, operation, and management of the wastewater treatment plant and associated sewer pump stations, which formally outlines the cost of the period of July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 as it relates to the previously authorized 10-year agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Is there anyone on the commission who would like to have an item removed from the consent calendar? Go ahead.
Item 5.
Item 5. Thank you.
I was going to say item 5 as well, but I'll add item 10.
Item 5 and 10 so far.
Just comment on item 4.
Okay, hang on. Let me see if there's any. I'll hold you for that for one moment. Okay, any other items to be removed from the consent calendar? Good. Does the public wish to have any item removed from the?
No, I intend to have 4 removed so we can discuss it.
Oh, you want to, oh,
I
okay,
just
you
have
want it
one-
removed.
yeah,
I
I
thought
have a
you just
comment.
wanted to make a comment. Okay, we're at 4 also. Okay. All right, anybody else have an item they want to remove from the consent calendar? From the public? All right. Okay, you had a comment that you wanted to make on item 7.
Yes.
Please do.
For item 7, which has to do with the wastewater treatment plant and the membranes, just a comment of thanks to Mr. Krieger and Mark Hubbard of Jacobs. We at the City Commission have a strategic priority to view all of our goals and actions through the lens of climate impacts, and they're recommending, and we're about to approve the electrification of that facility so that the HVAC, both the heating and cooling, is all electric, and that electricity will come from TCLP's green rate renewable energy. So it's a great example of what's possible, and I'd like to thank them.
Okay. Welcome. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Support.
Support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right. First item that was removed was item 5, and
No, 4.
No,
No.
5 was removed
no,
first. Sorry.
what was removed first?
Sorry. Chronological.
Nope,
We don't, no, we don't do that.
it's all on a whim.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I'd like to hear more about, because I voted in the past as we've banned alcohol in various parks throughout the city. But if folks have an alcohol addiction, where do we expect them to go to consume their alcohol? So on paper, this sounds like, yeah, that's a good idea, but in real world, what is this? What does this look like? And that's the question.
I don't know that there's a perfect answer to this, Commissioner Werner. But as we all know, we have a homelessness challenge in this community. Much of that is directed over in that area of the community. Oftentimes, but not all times, substance abuse is a part of the challenges that we're facing over there. And what we're being faced with currently with some of the legal direction that has been given out in the world, if you will, we're a little tied as far as how we can try to make that as best of a situation as possible. And so recently, myself, as well as the city attorney and the police chief, fire chief, and others, we have met to look at, okay, what tools do we have available that we can use? This was an item, the banning of beer and wine was an item that we did not currently have available. It is not to go through there and enforce with an iron fist, but it provides a tool to our officers when we do have a situation in the Pines that is directly attributed to, I guess I would say, the overconsumption of those substances. So at least it gives our officers a tool to use to get them to a place where they can go sober up. Anything beyond that, I'd want to defer to the chief, because that starts to get into policing that is far outside of my training. And please, the city attorney as well.
Just to add to what the interim city manager just said, we do have available in this community, and probably it's good for everybody to know, a lot of programs that deal with substance abuse, including mental health court, substance abuse court, and things like that. And so sometimes, as another tool, that is a way to approach wraparound services for individuals who do have an addiction disease. So I just want to put that out there, that it can lead to a supportive and a wraparound type of a solution for some folks.
Chief, anything to add? No, right there's good. That's why you're at the dais.
Okay. I would just like to reconfirm some of the things that they said. This isn't a blanket statement that we're just going to go out and start writing tickets for alcohol use. But a lot of times we are presented situations where the overconsumption of alcohol escalates the situation, and there's not a lot of recourse that we can do. So it's just another tool that we can use to deter some of the behavior that is occurring in the men's and women's trail. If you look at some of our numbers, it's one of the top 10 locations that we respond to within the city. So, I mean, we are over there quite a bit. We understand that there's addiction to alcohol. We have taken some of those things into consideration in some of the implementations within the police department, as far as our social worker, her QRT program, which targets homelessness, substance abuse, and mental health. And there are some of those other diversion situations where, providing or issuing a ticket or even making an arrest in some circumstances is the best thing for these individuals. It gets them into a place where that they can seek some services through these other diversion programs.
This is for beer and wine. Are we talking about spirits also?
That's already
That's our ban.
It's already banned?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, and I know Commissioner Warner was on the commission at the time, and maybe Richard's past life as a commissioner too, but we took such action too at Hall Park a few years ago for the same reason. We had some gathering issues, not all the time, but occasionally things would get a little out of control. So we implemented this, and I will say, as someone who lives there and near there and walks around all the time, I don't see police officers roaming around looking to take care of people. It tends to be everybody kind of just hanging out in the park and of all different backgrounds and people. But I think it has helped when there have been some issues. So I appreciate taking a step with the intention, the publicly stated intention of not turning this into a hammer to be used, but a tool in the toolbox, as has been said. Maybe more like something a little more gentle than that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments up here? All right. Anyone from the audience would like to have a comment on this?
Did you, actually, Mitch had a
No,
hand up.
public can speak next, and,
No, go ahead, Mitchell.
okay. I understand that this is a tool, but one, I don't feel like it's the best tool, and even if we can trust in our current police staff and our current other city staff and our broader community that it will not be used in a heavy-handed manner, there is no inherent provision, once we change this, that it couldn't be used in a heavier-handed manner in the future. I see, to Tim Werner's question of if we ban alcohol in these parks, where will people consume them? It would increasingly put that consumption happening between the point of sale, say a liquor store, a gas station, etc., and where people are in the Pines. So you'll have more drunken activity in neighborhoods or along those side streets, and more disposal of alcohol containers in places where we already get complaints that people are throwing bottles and cans into bushes.
Can I make the motion?
So while I can understand that this might seem like a good idea on paper, I don't see this as a tool that will fundamentally solve the problem. I see it as a tool that could exacerbate situations in terms of, yes, it might help somebody to get into services, but a ticket or an arrest does not directly have that effect, and either of those could have a deleterious effect on somebody with limited financial and legal options. As somebody that has worked at another campground, Traverse City State Park, I understand that the Pines is not an official campground, but it operates as such. Traverse City State Park does not ban alcohol except for glass bottles on the beach, and yet we were still able to issue arrests for, say, drunken disorderly conduct, harassment, assault, and other issues that can come as a result of alcohol overconsumption. Those tools are still available to the city.
Can I make the motion?
First of all, if you want to make a motion, but we're still going to hear from the public. So.
Yeah.
We need the motion to hear for the public.
Okay.
Right?
I
Not
wanted to make one
necessarily.
comment. I live a door down from Jubilee House, and this is a policy there. I don't see it being used as a cudgel. It's working very well. I live in the neighborhood. I don't see other problems developing because of it. And it's not the only park. It's not like we're just picking out this one place. This is many of our parks, so I'm comfortable with it.
To respond to that, though, the parks where we have implemented it, it's so that we could move them along to other places. And so we've created the Pines, not intentionally, but we have created it because we didn't want folks, Hall Park, we didn't want them at Hannah Park, various parks. And so they've moved along, and now where are we moving them along to? That's my question.
Mayor, if I may.
Hopefully into programs that will help support their
Okay.
addictions.
All right. So I'll be voting against this. This is just one part of a bigger thing, and now we're putting this one silo in place instead of dealing with the total picture that we need to be dealing with. I understand you're supposed to be gathering a group of people to talk to at the end of the month. That's great, but I've been working with this now for the last 2.5 years, trying to get people in to start talking about this in a bigger way instead of dealing with one little piece. I agree. Once we start saying you can't have alcohol, they will start moving. They're going to be worried. They're going to be afraid. I'm not crazy about having these folks at the what we call the Pines, but also the greater community has also forced them out of other places. So where are we going to put them? I like to think we have a little bit more compassion than going down this path. Before we have the motion, I will open this up for the public if they have any comments.
I'll read the public comment rules.
Please.
We don't have a motion,
for public
Mayor?
comment.
Well, we don't have to have a motion before we have public comment.
Whichever
Let's
you
go. Okay, Lee, you want to challenge it?
No.
Okay, thank you.
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you are a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time is elapsed, the timer will beep, and finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Well, my name is Justin Reed. I live at 638 Cottage Drive, apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. I do want to say that this alcohol ban should be for all parks. that should be reflected in this motion, in this language. Because behavioral issues and problems happen elsewhere, not just subjugated to the Pines, especially up to Clinch Park, especially during Cherry Festival and the tourists are here. But I think the fact that that you're just saying the Pines have a behavioral issue, that's not just the Pines. That can be anywhere else. So I hopefully, one of the things that can be looked at is the attainable wages in Traverse City and also the housing aspect of this, which Mr. Lewis, you have addressed. You said it's just, not one issue, it's a whole entire complex issue. So that is very appreciative. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Ryan Hannon, 2279 South Airport Road West. I'm not a city resident, but I work with ending homelessness for the past 15 years with the Goodwill and the Northwest Michigan Coalition and Homelessness. And I want to thank the city for their top priority of issues they're looking at is housing and homelessness. We know that the only way out of homelessness is with housing and, of course, supports to help people that need it and want it in that housing. But of all my years of working with people, not everyone has a alcohol use disorder, not everyone has a substance use disorder, not everyone has a severe mental health issue. Many people suffering from those things are compounded and fall into homelessness. But we could ban alcohol in every park and everywhere else, and it still doesn't address the issue of ending homelessness. So that is a housing issue, and I appreciate, like I said, the city working on that. There's lots of units being proposed for housing in the city, so I'm really grateful for that. I'm also grateful for working together with the city police over the years. Oftentimes, if there's an issue that's homelessness that's not necessarily a crime, they'll reach out to us so we can come along and try to have an intervention before the police come along. That's been very, very helpful. I also know a lot of the suffering of the effects of alcohol and the behavior on people who are homeless living in an unsafe situation. I'm grateful for the proposed meeting coming up to look at this. We know that in our community we don't have enough emergency shelter space during the summertime, spring and early fall. We do have enough space to cover the need in the wintertime, but the winter shelter closes. The other shelter on the Goodwill Inn is completely full with a wait list. So it's a complex issue. Thank you for looking at it. Keep up the good work with housing and working together. The police they don't like to criminalize. They don't like to what I call ping-ponging the people who are homeless all around the city. This is just more part of that, but I just want to remind everyone to keep the focus on the ultimate goal is the services for the people. A lot of times the people that are drinking, that are living out there, alcohol has got a grip on them and it is not fun. They're not there to party, and they've tried treatment over and over and over again. They come out of their homeless again. It's a no-win situation for them. So thanks.
Anyone else? You had something you wanted to say?
I can wait until there's a motion.
All right. I'll be glad to entertain a motion at this point.
I don't have it up. Yikes. I move that the resolution banning the possession and consumption of alcoholic beverages in city parks be amended to include the men's trail and the women's trail, including Grand Traverse Commons, Veterans Memorial Park, and Myers Silverbrook Acres, be adopted.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Is there any other discussion? You had a comment?
Yes, if I could just note, we definitely appreciate the commission taking a look at this and the comments that we've heard. But our public safety officials need tools out there. I've heard many comments from our police officers and our firefighters on the issues that they're dealing with out there, and they need every tool in their toolbox possible. Not only hearing from them, but also the public. We have a public safety, health, welfare issue out there, and we're just trying to make sure that our staff is equipped to manage that as best we can within the walls that we're forced to operate within. So thank you.
Any other comments from the commission?
Yes,
I'll take with Ms. Stanley first. She hasn't spoken.
Thank you. As some of you know, I work with an organization that does direct outreach with the population of our communities unhoused. And talking this over with colleagues today, there was certainly concern about what happens to the folks who are in these places who are using alcohol there because they have an addiction that is very, frankly, dangerous for them to stop drinking abruptly. They also have had the experience of working with our police department on the quick response team and in other capacities, and felt reassured that this wouldn't be patrolling, looking for people who were consuming alcohol, but focused on helping remove people from a situation that is escalating because of the use of alcohol for the protection of others, either other people who are staying in those encampments or the surrounding neighborhood. And that was based on their experience of working with our outstanding Traverse City Police Department, which is the reason that I feel comfortable supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Well said.
Yes, it's not part of this ordinance that's being amended, but I do find it a little hypocritical elsewhere in the ordinance that we list Hickory Hills as one of the parks in which alcohol is prohibited, yet we amended the special use permit with Garfield Township to allow for weddings and other events to have alcohol served. So we can allow it for people that are paying an event fee, but we can criminalize it for people that are just playing disc golf.
Okay. All right, any other comments?
I would just comment that the private use at Hickory requires a liquor license and a certified bartender at it, not a come with your 12-pack and hang out. So I think that is a little bit of a difference than free allowing liquor in some of the, or beverages in some of these places for anyone, not just those experiencing homelessness, our summer visitors and others who might be in our parks. That's a very different threshold.
Correct. Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Roll call.
Need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Treadwell?
No.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Mayor?
No. Motion passes. Okay. We had item 10 removed. I think, Ms. Treadwell, you had this removed, your concern?
Yes, I'm not opposed to picking up trash in our downtown, in our parks. And I do appreciate that as this is increasing by 3% from previous years, the DDA is largely picking up the slack on that. But I do have concerns about the overall size of the contract and the frequency by which it necessitates our bins being emptied. Considering in our off-season, most of our bins wouldn't fill up if you let them go for an entire week, and even in the busiest time of year, this Cherry Festival, there's only a select few bins that actually get filled to overflowing, and those tend to be outside of places that have grab-and-go food, namely ice cream and other confections. So I'd say it's a more prudent use of funds and overall city resources if we had merely tried to have more trash bins at places of higher use rather than a higher emptying frequency for all trash bins across this downtown and parks.
Okay. Do you want to comment on this?
I can try. I don't know if it's going to appease the concerns, but Jean is also in the, and Michelle is here, and Frank is here if there's other questions that I can't answer. But essentially, the city is still paying for the level of service that it was providing before throughout the downtown. The DDA was desiring a higher level of service, a higher frequency of emptying of the cans, and that's where the difference comes in. That's not to say that there couldn't be additional cans added at some point in time. I'd have to defer. I'm seeing heads nod. But there still is going to be a level of frequency and a level of service that the DDA would like to try to maintain down there. That's why they're willing to pay the difference to make sure of that. Certainly, we can call other staff up if there's additional questions, if you'd like.
All right. With that, I'll open this up for the public. Anybody have any questions or concerns? All right, I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
I move that the mayor and city clerk execute an amendment to the agreement with the Downtown Development Authority for the cost sharing for waste hauling services as outlined in the June 23rd, 2023 memo from Director of Public Services. Such contract subject as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, and further that the mayor and city clerk execute an amendment to the contract with GFL, previously American Waste, for waste hauling services at various city-owned locations within the Downtown Development Authority District in an amount not to exceed $97,850. Such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds in the related budgets, with the execution of such amendment subject to the city clerk's receipt of an executed agreement with the Downtown Development Authority articulating it will cover $68,495 of the cost. Is this the one that had to have an amendment? No. Okay.
No.
There you go.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Stanley. Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, I'll support this for now. But it does strike me, looking at the map, that Clinch Park and the open space, which are part of the DDA district, could be included as far as, I'm sure there's plenty of trash cans there.
I can say that they are handled on the same dump truck routes.
But as far as who's paying for them, right? If that's part of the DDA, again, not for tonight, but for future discussion, who's paying for what? Because that's what this is all about, who's paying for what. So, thank you.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Covert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
No.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay. Next was item 4, which was consideration of amending the City Commission resolution recognizing the Neighborhood Association to recognize Indian Woods neighborhood. Mr. Wilson, you had this pulled?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to open up with applauding Ms. Anderson and Ms. Kennedy on their efforts to get with their neighbors and put a neighborhood organization, association together, and that I absolutely do support that. And I apologize for not reaching out before tonight and potentially putting you on the spot here in front of the community. But after the agenda review, I wanted time to think about it, and I knew the city clerk was going to reach out and see if there was consideration of connecting it with the adjacent or the immediate north neighborhood. And the response was no, and that's okay. And so I can see that the neighborhood, every street there is reflective of large individual nations that predate the United States, and that there is a street called Indian Woods Drive within the center of that neighborhood. And that each of those nations individually have several bands that are recognized as sovereign nations by the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs and represented by the National Congress of American Indians. And often I was taught, we hang on to the word Indian because so many treaties were written and included that word in it, and so that if we were to try to deviate too much from that, it could have a negative impact on Native American nations. But I'd be remiss if I didn't just take a moment and respectfully ask if you would maybe consider a different name to reflect your neighborhood association. And I know that that when you formed, you probably meant no disrespect, and so I'm not insinuating that. But and I don't want to direct where you would go with it, but if I could make an offer, maybe Mitigwaking, if you want to be reflective and inclusive of the immediate Anishinaabe culture here. Mitigwaking literally translates to the land of the trees, and that might be a good reflection. However, I'm not against your neighborhood, and like I said, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least address that. Miigwech.
That's, well, I think that's something that once we recognize, if you give that, we can send that back to them and ask them at their next meeting if they would reconsider.
Yeah, it's never too late, right? I mean,
No, we just do a quick amendment to this afterwards. If that's fair enough, okay? We can send that out as a note afterwards.
Mayor, it looks like Ms. Kennedy might want to
Well,
make a
she
comment. Is
can,
that
she
possible?
likes, but I don't think she can do that here tonight, so. Yes, I will in a second. Any other comments from the city commission? Okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
Caroline Kennedy, 1925 Seneca Street, Traverse City resident. And Jackie Anderson is also here this evening, and she may wish to add something to my comment. We did discuss this in the formation meeting. We had in excess of 80 people turn out at the formation of our neighborhood association meeting, that initial meeting. This was one of the items on the agenda. Obviously, it goes along with we're following what the city asks for, the naming of the association. That neighborhood is platted out. It's named Indian Woods. It is the name of that area. And there was quite a bit of discussion among different members. There was a vote on probably 3 or 4 different names, and by vast majority, the residents who are there wanted to honor and keep the Indian Woods name. So that's the history behind it. It was not an oversight. I appreciate your suggestion, and I guess we'll see how strongly the rest of the commission feels about that. But that was the discussion that took place, and that was the decision that was made by the people who live there. So, Jackie, did you want to add? Thank you.
Jackie Anderson, 1725 Comanche Street, Traverse City. And I really want to thank you for bringing this up because it was a topic of conversation, and I've had follow-up conversations with other residents in the area. The conversation at the organizing meeting really came down to the fact that each of us receive our property bills twice a year, and they are identified as lot such and such of Indian Woods subdivision. And for the folks at the meeting, that seemed to be an important point. But I wonder if there might be a solution that would enable us to recognize some of the heritage at our meetings in the future, and perhaps instill that level of awareness that might not currently be here. But in terms of the name of the association itself, it was really driven as much by the city platting and the subdivision name as anything else. So if that's helpful.
Thanks.
Still something that could be taken into consideration, but we don't have to make that decision tonight, so. but-
I did have a quick question to clarify. I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate Ms. Anderson and Ms. Kennedy getting up and speaking, and I understand, and I appreciate that was part of the conversation as well. Given what Ms. Anderson just said, I guess I would ask Lauren that if we as a city wanted to amend past mistakes, is that something we can do as how they're plotted and change the name of Indian Woods? Or is that something that has to come from the neighborhood itself now? And not to say that I don't think that this won't hold this up one way or another. I'm curious about process going forward here.
Indian Woods neighborhood association can call itself what it wants to call itself, you know.
But I guess I'm asking because,
The-
Ms. Anderson's saying that when she gets her tax bill from
Right.
us, it says it.
The city can amend the plat through circuit court action.
Okay.
So that would require to go through the circuit court. There's a process for that to amend a plat.
Okay.
Who would initiate that?
The city can initiate it.
Okay.
It's quite an intensive process to do that, just so that the commission is aware. It requires a lot of notice of everyone in the plat. There's a whole process laid out in the statute for amending a plat. Usually you do it for something like vacating a street entirely, and that's been done before. So that would be the typical. I don't know that I've ever heard it being done to change the name on the plat.
I guess I still I'm recognized. So want to first clarify, we're not talking about vacating anything for anybody, lest they get concerned as we're having this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. I appreciate the conversation and comments that have been said here. I do hope that, whereas before it was a gathering of neighbors who have always lived in the neighborhood and it's been the same way, and we all know how that goes, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but much like we've seen changes with things like NFL football names, that maybe now that a member of our local tribe and our commission and a neighbor, though maybe not directly in your neighborhood, has spoken up, you might pick that conversation up again. It seems like that's a good faith discussion you're willing to operate or enter into, so I appreciate that. And so with that, I'll make the motion that the resolution recognizing neighborhood associations be amended to include the Indian Woods Neighborhood Association.
Got a motion, is there support?
I'll support. If I can just, one more comment and say that I understand from the plot in your tax bill, and not too unlike my explanation of that word being used in treaty language. And so I just would have been remiss if I didn't bring it up. And knowing that it could be changed at a later date if the community feels that way, makes me feel better. So, thank you.
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, it brings us down to old business. Old business, the first item on old business is a public hearing on the assessment roll. Let me get my old here on my computer. Public hearing for the assessment roll for Special Improvement District 22002B for an alley north of East Front Street between Peninsula Drive and North Garfield Avenue, and adopting the relating budget amendments to undertake this. Okay, so we take it from there. We did not close the public hearing on the last, wasn't it? I don't
No, you're
remember.
right. We didn't. You're right. We suspended
You
it.
adjourned it.
Adjourned it, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we
To this
adjourned
meeting.
it, so we're just going to reopen the public hearing. Again, folks, I think there's a clause that you need to read again. Do you
Yes, I
want me
have a
to-
little script here I need to
Yeah, I
read.
know, you need to read this one more time. So we're going to reopen the public hearing as soon as you do this. Okay.
All right. The public hearing of an assessment roll for a special improvement district also acts as the board of review for those who are receiving a proposed benefit and proposed special assessment. It is extremely important to preserve your right to further appeal by recording your attendance at this meeting. Even if you do not plan to speak publicly to the city commission tonight, we still ask that all those in attendance who are part of the proposed district to please state your name and address so the city clerk and the city assessor may record your attendance.
Okay. Okay. Who plans to who is here from the neighborhood, please? Okay. First of all, if we can, if you don't mind, are you taking names? Or who's taking names? I'm going to have you, each of you, give us your name, and then I'll allow you to speak in a few minutes if you want to, just so we have it, it's on that record that we got to have. So, just come up. Yeah, just come up and, yeah, and then we'll open it up for the public hearing. I mean, we'll open the public hearing.
Okay, my name is Steve Stannard, 1016 Peninsula Drive. I'm a resident on the alley and a business owner here in Traverse City as well.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Hunko. I live at 1016 Peninsula Drive, and I'm also a resident of the city.
Thank you.
My name is Carl Lato. I'm here on behalf of Bethlehem Lutheran Church, as well as the house that's adjacent to the church at 1020 Peninsula Drive.
Okay.
I live at 15793 Smoky Hollow Road.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. So we've got everyone. Okay. We'll now open the, or how did you say this word? We'll continue the public hearing that started. Okay, it's recontinued. So it has been opened. So who would like to address the commission on this particular topic? Thank you, sir, for your indulgence.
Hard to find space up here.
It's a little crowded.
If anything goes awry, it's me hitting keys by accident.
That's okay.
Evening, Commissioners.
Will you please use the mic, though, because there is an audience at home? Thank you.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. I have a short prepared statement. I'll only take a minute or two of your time. I've also prepared a couple of slides for your use in conjunction with this statement. As your partners in the future paving of Bryant Park Alley, I'm here tonight to encourage you to defer or deny 2022-002B, creating a special taxing district for paving of the alley. Like a lot of older, mature Traverse City neighborhoods, Bryant Park features mature landscape, a mix of housing options, and landmarks that contribute to its up-north character. Of course, like the others, Bryant Park, my neighborhood, has its share of existing problems. Among them is on-lot drainage, and this is in particular caused by several years of paving and modification to the alley and Peninsula Drive. What's happening is the alley is draining itself directly back onto 4 or 5 of the internal lots, and the water has nowhere left to go. What I'd like to do is to encourage you to take an opportunity to solve more than one problem with this application. I'm under no illusion that eventually this alley will be paved. But as proposed, I believe this alley will only contribute to the drainage problem that exists on our lot, and I do feel that we have an opportunity to add to the character of the neighborhood by preserving the mature trees and increasing green space, allowing the engineers with the city and or outside groups to do their thing and to increase the green space, saving the mature trees. If I can, I don't know how to do this, but you can help me here a little bit. This is the existing condition of the alley. Should be just an arrow.
found the button.
Okay. If you take a quick look at this slide, this is traditionally one of the ways that we've approached the paving of the alleys in Traverse City. This is an artist rendition of the full extent of the proposed paving as I know it to be at this date. If you'll go to the next one. Rather, I'd like to see that we consider things like reduced pavement sections, variable pavement, and bio remediation on the site to affect effective stormwater drainage. I also strongly encourage you to take a look in conjunction with this project at looking at existing drainage facilities and help us solve the problem. I can guarantee you that we'll be back in another 2 years after this pavement has been installed, asking you guys to help us solve the problem. We're your partners. Let's take care of business on one shot, get it done, and get it fixed. I'm done. Any questions of me? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As I said, my name is Julie Hunko. I live at 1016 Peninsula Drive, and I have a very low-tech presentation. Two things tonight. I would ask that you defer or deny request 2022-002B for a couple reasons. One is we don't need it. Yes, my car gets dusty on occasion when it's dusty back there, and yes, it gets a little bumpy during the thaw period, but all in all, this isn't something that's necessary or needed. The second reason, and this is my primary reason, is you're asking us to pay close to $1,000 more a year in a tax assessment for the next 10 years, and yet I have no idea what that's for other than paving the alley. And I have to think, commissioners, would you be comfortable with that if it were you? I would hope that you would also have some similar questions that I have, such as, to my husband's point, what's the impact on the mature greenery? If you remove that mature greenery, how does that affect the additional runoff? So removing that and adding pavement, I'm not an engineer, but I'm pretty sure that creates more runoff, which eventually will make it to the bay. And my other concern as a homeowner is how does this affect me going forward if we decide to sell the house? How does this special assessment affect us? So for those reasons, I'm asking you again tonight to defer, deny this request so we can do future studies or additional studies. Thank you.
As I said, I'm here representing Bethlehem Lutheran Church. Our church gets a lot of water from the alley flowing into our parking lot. And it's not just water, it's water that carries a lot of clay from the gravel. On a heavy rain, maybe an inch or so rain, there's a steady stream of brown water coming into a parking lot, and sometimes, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year, we'll have a foot of water standing over the basin that we have in our parking lot. That's only one of 7 basins, by the way. They're all built with the type of system that's being proposed for this project. A big concrete tank with stone around the tank, and that whole thing fills up with water to maybe a foot water's depth on top of the pavement. And sometimes, it'd go even higher than that if it didn't flow over the pavement to the next basin, farther into the parking lot. And the alley, if you look at it, maybe the east 50 feet of the alley flows into Garfield Avenue. Then it flows west to where our parking lot is. And probably there's at least 100 feet west of our property that flows east again to our property. So we're getting a lot of water, probably even from both sides of the alley, because on the south side of the alley, if you look at those properties, they all slope toward the alley. And there's a little bit of ponding there on the south side of the alley, but then it overflows the alley and ends up on the north side of the alley where our parking lot is. So we're getting a lot of water from other properties into our parking lot. And it's pretty frequently that we have water ponding on the surface because of the water. And that's our biggest issue. We would like to have the alley paved, but more importantly, address the drainage issues, because we're getting a lot of water from the city alley plus adjacent properties. And so we're very much in favor of this project going ahead ASAP. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. See you hereby closed. Okay. Okay, traditionally, when we have these SDIs coming in, if they reach 51%, the commission has moved that forward. It's gone through a public process. In this case, 63% of the, or 17 of the 27 properties that are affected have voted yes that they want this alley done. So that's 63%. So if you want any other questions, but traditionally the commissions in the past have honored their requests, has gone through that process. So I don't know what other questions we may have. Yes.
I would love to hear from the city engineer about the drainage situation there and whether this is a fix or not a fix.
And the extent to which putting this forward commits us to a specific design schematic.
This starts the process for that. We have a conceptual design that the estimates are based on. We don't have design plans finished. The process would be get the surveys, topographic surveys done, and then we'd do the full designs, which would include the drainage design. I don't know. I was off on disability while this was being managed, so I don't know the precise details, but the typical process would be to have this adopted, and then we would go through the process of getting the surveys done and then go through the drainage design, which would likely include, some sort of ground infiltration. We are close to the bay, so we have to gauge whether there'll be infiltration or not. The swales along the edge of the alleys are great. The trouble becomes when the property owners decide to start to park on them and things. So that'll be a good conversation. If we can do some sort of surface area, ditching or shallow swales or bioswales. But it really comes down to getting the data, getting the soil borings if necessary, and figuring out where everything's at and doing a design that's going to get the job done. I do want to point out that a gravel alley is not a pervious alley. A gravel alley sheds the water, I think, as Carl Lido mentions. Very similar to asphalt. The bigger part is it carries the clay components or the constituents of the gravel. That's the sediment that is the target pollutant of our watershed protection plan. So although it is gravel, water does not infiltrate, and having pavement would allow us to manage that with a cleaner surface, although we still have surfactants and oils and other things that then become factors when it is paved. So it is certainly going to move us towards the direction of cleaner water with the target pollutant of being sediment.
So, Mr. Lodge, who initiated this, do you know?
The property owners did.
The property owners did.
Yeah.
And was there an attempt to get the other 13, no, the other 10?
We don't do that, no. We are not in the business of selling anything. We have an application. We give the property owners the opportunity to have the best information that we have that we can prepare with the level of effort, without assurances that there'll be any revenue to support the engineering design. So we go through a process, we educate them, we really make it difficult for people to do this. And there's several shots that they have to do. There's the initial petition, then they have to go back and re-get things signed officially, and then Polly sends out cards, and then we get the survey, which is presented now. So this is a huge milestone, and the fact that there is the majority, a clear majority of property owners that would like to continue on is an indication of where the property owners stand with this without influence from city staff.
Can I ask one last thing? Will there be an opportunity for public engagement or some conversation with the property owners there as the design?
Typically that happens as a result of, we're here to help with the alley situation. We'll hear from the people that have issues, as well as we will reach out to everyone as best we can. The sponsors of the petitions, the property owners, we typically try to work with, a representation, and not just everybody. But again, This is a larger project than normal, so I think that, you know, it probably warrants some discussion. And then because of the current issues that are there, we really need to identify that, you know, what are the opportunities for making improvements, true improvements, not just getting it paved.
Right.
I had a question, I guess, in this vein. So I appreciate the comments about wanting this, you know, we have, as a commission, a goal of protecting our waters and our water and resources and trying to avoid, as you've been talking about, Mr. Lodge, more contaminants getting in our water supply. So if you go through, and this is, after 8 years, I haven't had a lot of questions about special assessment, so this is my first, I think, of digging in this much. If you go through and find out that this design, to do this right and to make sure that it's going to drain properly and we're not getting backups in a parking lot and we're not spilling into the water supply, that this, you know, we've put a $305,000 figure in here, comes out more. Do we have a way, because that is a goal and priority of the city, to make sure that what we're agreeing to is being paid by the owners that they agree to in their petition, and only that, or does that get then altered along the way?
This is the agreement. So
Okay.
we have $305,000 that's split 50-50.
Okay.
If it's an amount that is less, there's generally no issues. If it's an amount that's 10% more, then there's an opportunity for the city to reestablish the special improvement district at the higher rate. But typically, we would engage the property owners and do a, you know, before we get into the investment and building things, we would get into the issue of, you know, do you want to continue to pursue it? So there would be an opportunity if we go, I think it's more than 10%. It would be the Treasury office usually tells us, you know, identifies what that percentage would be, but I believe it's 10% over. Then we would have the opportunity to redistribute those costs, and/or we would have the opportunity for the property owners to say, no, we're not interested anymore.
Would there be the opportunity, does that at all come back to the city commission, either to have us say the opportunity of, no, we understand these property owners don't want to pay more than they agreed to, but we really think it's important to do this extra 20 grand worth or something that would go above and beyond?
I have to throw a plug. If we had a stormwater utility, we may not have this discussion. It might not be such a great expense. Just saying, you know, there'd be other revenue sources that we might be able to apply in this situation. And in other situations, we have looked at, you know, what we typically do, because we have made a lot of investments, like with sidewalks, for example. So sometimes on the ends where we have some very costly pavement that has sidewalks, we divest that back to a general fund expense because of wanting it to be a sidewalk that's through the alleyway and with our standards, where it's not necessarily something that would normally be paid for by the property owner. So we tend to look at those items, and if there is things that we would normally pay for out of pocket, we would exclude those from the 50-50 part of the SID.
Great. Given this has to do with stormwater, I'm really glad to hear that, because if that rubber does hit the road, I would hope we'd get a chance to contribute a little to make sure we're doing it right.
Good. Any other questions for the engineer? Yes, sir.
While you're up there.
Standing without assist devices.
This is
Good.
very, I was gonna say very impressive, Mr. Lodge.
Recovery is going.
So rather than me trying to guess from years past at alley pavement widths and such, if you could share what our standard alley paved widths are and what...
As narrow as possible.
Yes.
Well, but that's where I'm headed with it, is what... If the standard width, say, is 20, does the state say it has to be at least so, like what, can we go down to 15 per the diagrams that were shown and trees?
I would love to say yes.
What might be possible?
I would love to say yes, but the fire code has a provision of 20 feet. So that is something that comes into play, perhaps. But yes, I would love to see an alley that's not 20 feet. So that would give us some opportunities. But keeping in mind that, you know, it's generally a 33-foot space.
Right.
And then we have utility poles and some other things. So trying to get all those features into that space, yes. We would look at, especially if there's the idea of commercial traffic and things in the types of vehicles that are using the alley. A lot of our alleys are adjacent to, you know, mixed use things where the 20-foot really is a necessity because of the trucking and the occasional stopping and standing. You know, so if we could, you know, do a narrow template, there's nothing that in my mind prescribes it has to be 20 feet. Love to see it. We'll work with planning and our staff to come up with a good solution for that.
Thank you. No, I think that's helpful for the neighbors to hear Not that it's doable, but it might be possible, like it can be discussed. So thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't read my own notes for a second, so one more question. There was mention in some of the comments about trees. Is there, and it's not in our details here,
I have
is there an intention to take down any
I
trees?
have no idea, I'm sorry.
Okay, but that'll be discussed if anything like that happens with the neighbors.
It would be something that we will work with our arborist, our tree folks, and if it's within the public alley, we will get their advice. So we'll get if it's a tree that is of a certain type or condition or whatever, we'll look at that. I'm not sure how we feel about trees and alleys, but typically trees and if there's overhead lines, I don't know, but that's not a good mix. So we'd have to figure out what that's all about. But we would generally consult with our resource people, the team that would help design it.
So that's just to reiterate, because people didn't know last time we
One
talked
other
about that we
question,
have an
is this a good
arborist.
time to bury the lines on this alley? Can we?
We can do our
Not a
own, but we
question.
don't, we don't control consumers,
I
we
still
don't
want
control
them buried in
DTE,
my
we
alley,
don't
so
control
I'm doing
AT&T.
all I can.
And,
We can't have a special assessment on
Good luck.
AT&T?
no, believe me, we know that, we cannot.
Well, you
Seems
can
like
never
a
say
good time.
never. You can always ask the question. I would say that typically the answer would be no, unless there's a plan for that. I'm not aware of a plan to underground in that particular location. And keeping in mind that attachments to the poles for things like fiber is what really drives a lot of the new stuff that's going on right now, keeping the aerial routes a necessity.
Okay.
Everybody wants internet.
So, oh, Marcia.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll be glad
Thank
to,
you.
I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
So just to summarize it, as I make the motion to address the comments that we heard, what we're hearing is that engineering will be coming to the neighborhood. They will be designing something in mind with proper drainage that won't be adding to the pollutants in our water. That is a kind of an overall policy that we have in the city for projects and that we have for the last couple of years. And that any tree removal or anything that would happen with that would be in consultation with our arborist. So it's not going to just be like, this isn't the way, let's take it out. So with that knowledge, I'm going to make the motion that the resolution approving special improvement district number 2022-002B be adopted and that a budget amendment to be made to increase the budgeted revenue and budgeted expenses in the special assessment fund by $305,000 to reflect the revenue and expense for this project.
Have a motion.
Support.
You got support by Mr. Treadwell. Okay. We've had the public hearing, so I won't be asking again. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay. Next is a consideration of authorizing a 3-year contract for revisions of a school resource officer. Mr. Geisner, I will turn this over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commission. On June 26th, a Monday, we had a study session regarding the concept of bringing a school resource officer to the Central High School campus, very similar to the model that we're using at the intermediate school district. During that study session, I thought we had a great and robust conversation with the City Commission as well as staff and board members from TCAPS, which also included Dr. Van Wagner, who is here with us this evening, as well as the principal for Central High School, talking about the goals of the program. I think we spent a good amount of time talking about what the school resource officer is and is not. We also talked about giving the schools and the police department the space to be able to develop the program out, right-size it for this particular location, should the agreement be approved. You do have a copy of the agreement. We did take a little bit more time to get the numbers to you. I think you should have all received that today. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Interim Chief Richmond to introduce this topic further. And Dr. Van Wagner, I'd like to invite you up to the podium in case there's any questions or anything that you would like to add. I guess the last thing I would just remind is this is being supported by a 3-year, $150,000 grant, approximately $50,000 per year for the first 3 years. So with that, Chief Richmond.
Thank you. Again, like City Manager said, June 26th, we had a very good conversation, I thought. Our job description basically, essentially says the SRO program is to ensure safety and reduce criminal incidents involving people on the campus. Ways to do that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to lay down the law, or as people are concerned, it's a pipeline into the criminal justice system. No, I think a bigger aspect of that is developing relationships with our youth, being mentors, educating them, being a positive role model, I think is one of the biggest things that an SRO can do in the school. And being a former SRO myself, and I saw that. And as I promoted out of the school, I saw individuals on the road that were in the school at the same time and remembered me, and remembered that I was their school resource officer. I had a conversation with one of our detectives today. I think it's probably been 10 or more years since he was in the school, and he still runs into people that he made a mark on, not necessarily as a law enforcement officer, but as a person, and through those relationships. And they remember that. And if that relationship can change a person's outlook on the path they're traveling, but also on the outlook of law enforcement, it may benefit everyone involved in that going down the road. So with that, I mean, we have a concept in place. We have an SRO at Northwest Ed now that is working very well. We have a contract in place with them. The contract with TCAPS mimics that, and as of this morning, we had an agreed upon contract with Superintendent Dr. Van Wagner to continue this. We were approached by TCAPS to have police protection at the school. This isn't something new. This is reestablishing something that we've had in place for a long time, just not over the last few years.
Anything you want to add?
Again, appreciate the opportunity. I know our school board also had representation at that meeting, and this is an opportunity the state of Michigan has given us through a competitive grant. I know one of the questions that's been asked is maybe what about when the grant's done, and I can tell you that our board, currently, I mean, can change over time, but, is very supportive and understanding that this may be an obligation that continues from that standpoint. That's really important to our board. School safety and security is something that we've put a lot of resources. The state, a part of our financial program that we get from the state, has given us safety and security funds as well as mental health funds. We think that both of those are very, very important. We know the mental health of our children is very important. Right now we have postings for 3 social workers. We'd like to try or hire more human health professionals as well. We're expanding all those in our elementary programs where I can in our high schools. So we're doing everything on that front that we can. So understand that another person that can be a respected person that can work with our youth, and in my personal experience with SROs have been that. I think it does take the right person, and we've talked about that, a part of the interview process and those things, that we will have to have a lot of conversations about the training that SROs have with current protocols, and really a lot on relationships is the big part that we want to try and do. And again, along with our mental health professionals that we can continue to try and bring in, we would appreciate that support, and we thank you for all the effort from the department, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. We turn it back to you and commissioners.
All right. As I said, it was a very healthy discussion we had back in June, so it's down to us.
I just had a really quick comment and question. So as my commissioners know, I had to leave to go have dental surgery during this discussion. I did have a question I asked offline about, would this officer be under our department only? Because we do know that the city TCPD has a very different policing philosophy than the county and townships might. And I was assured that this is, other than mutual aid, which we always engage in, that this is under our community policing guidelines. So I appreciated that. The other question, I guess, or request, and I didn't see it in the whereases, and I don't think I need to go to a full amendment, but what I would appreciate if this is passed is some data year to year for us of, what I'd love to see is that arrests even go down, or any kind of, engagement on the campuses that we are on goes down. But certainly to make sure that we're seeing it doesn't go up. And if it is, that would be an opportunity for the chief to come in and explain, maybe there was some outside mitigating factor with students that led to it, or maybe we just need to reexamine how we're approaching it. Not to micromanage, but again, because there is this concern about SROs and our funding of it, just basically a check-in once a year, if that's possible. And again, I might have missed it in one of the whereases.
Yes, that would be possible. I mean, currently, our SRO for Northwest Ed does a yearly report.
That's what I thought.
That has a lot of those numbers and explains a lot of those numbers. So yes, that's possible, and that's something that we would do with the TCAPS.
Excellent. And I know we do it with our social worker right now too. So that's great. If we can just keep that model, that's great.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I'll open it up to the public if they have any particular questions before I entertain a motion. Okay, seeing none. Okay, I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
Do you have it?
I have it up. I move that the mayor and city clerk execute the contract for the provision of school resource officer services to the Traverse City Area Public School District by the City of Traverse City, which would authorize the placement of a Traverse City Police Department police officer at Traverse City Central High School for the period of September 5th, 2023 until June 15th, 2026, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no surprise that I'll be voting against this. I had brought up, the topic of studies, and some studies were shared, but none of them go to show that an SRO actually cuts down on school shootings or saves lives. I have tremendous respect for Principal Houghton, and what I heard her state in that meeting, because she's under quite a bit of pressure from all sides, what I heard her state in that meeting was she wants consistency. She wants consistency when she calls Traverse City Police Department, having the same officer respond so that officer can build relationships with her and her staff as well as students. She didn't speak up and say, I need an armed officer in my school. She said she wants consistency. So to me, this is a good CYA by the adults, but the students are smart and they understand and they learn by watching when things are done, just so adults can say they did something, but when there's no real solid reason for doing it.
Okay. Mr. Treadwell.
Again, I won't reiterate all my statements at our previous, at this point, 3 meetings, but I do have significant reservations about this. While there is some data out there, it hasn't shown a shining record of success for SROs, and in fact, it can lead to, as Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow referenced, a higher rate of arrests. I mean, that's not directly what you were saying, but I appreciate your concern for that and wanting to look out for that in the future. I'm a little disappointed that yes, this is a grant, but that there weren't similar grant opportunities available or made available to hire a social worker or to hire a school nurse or additional support staff. I'm not saying that those grants aren't available, but grant funding was specifically made available through the Michigan State Police, not to promote an overall goal of school safety by hiring whatever additional resource officials a school may need, but to specifically hire school resource officers.
Okay. We have a motion and we have support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
No.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay. As we go to new business, consideration of adopting a resolution to support the Michigan Department of Transportation TAP application. It's for our non-motorized trail on the water side of the Grandview Parkway, M22, as part of the 2025 corridor improvements.
Yes, briefly, and then I'm going to ask Director Winter to come up and add anything or be ready to answer any questions. MDOT came to us very recently regarding this application that they were going to submit in collaboration with Elmer Township. Did I get that right? Elmwood Township?
Elmwood.
Elmwood, thank you. Elmwood Township regarding their project along the roadway there. This is for the provision of a 12-foot wide path that would take the existing path up into Elmwood Township. I know I'm missing a number of pieces here, Sean, but can you save me?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So in 2025, MDOT will be redoing M72 and M22 from Division to Cherry Bend. That plan has long called for a non-motorized component on the water side of the corridor, specifically a 12-foot paved trail. In addition to this project, Elmwood is also going for a grant then to connect the trail down Cherry Bend to the Leelanau Trail, so therefore the whole network becomes a little more tied together. As you're probably aware, the state programs projects like these years in advance and assigns them a budget number. Well, with the escalating construction costs, MDOT has conducted their preliminary base plans, and the costs have come back exceeding budget. So now MDOT's at a point where they want to keep these elements that they've heard from the public. They've been having some community meetings, I think one specifically with the Slabtown neighborhood, and there was a lot of support for this. So they're just trying to find different revenue sources to keep everything covered in the project. So it's approximately 2.3 miles, scheduled again for 2025. And if there are any specific questions to the project, we do have a local TSC representative with us here tonight, Mr. Porath.
And I would just add in closing, just as a reminder, this is mostly for moral support. There is no financial ask of the city in this letter.
Yeah, I have concerns about this. It may be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we should support MDOT, but I've not heard discussions much like we had about the volleyball courts, like what's the best use of our limited park space. So say MDOT is willing to move the highway away from the water, do we want more space for people to recreate, or do we want more space for people to travel through, either walking, jogging, riding their bikes, whatever it might be? It's a good discussion to have. There's limited space now. Even with a little more space, it's still limited space. So how do we make an informed decision up here to say, yes, MDOT, go get that sliced bread, it's fantastic, or maybe not. Maybe we have a slightly wider trail still on the other side, and we provide access across, which sounds like it's being proposed, to allow people to use the waterfront. It's a good discussion, and I think it needs to be had, and there needs to be more detail. We have yet to see, as this body, even draft plans for what the project is. With Mr. Colburn being gone, Ms. Hill retiring, I don't even know, maybe others up here know, who's negotiating on our behalf with MDOT, and what are we asking for in that agreement? Like, what are we after? This is a once in a 80-year opportunity to make that corridor better. I myself and others were told we were too late for the other part of the MDOT project. So here we are, not knowing anything. Time is going by. Will we be too late when it gets in front of us and we say, oh, wait, how about? So I don't feel like there's enough information to make an informed decision tonight. Again, might be the greatest thing, but how do we know? That's all. Thanks.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Do you have any other questions, or you should have representatives here from the MDOT? Do you have any thoughts that you want to share with us as we move forward on this, or have they been covered?
Yeah, just that we've had multiple public meetings and stakeholder meetings, and so we're always looking for input from everybody. So we're
Okay. Okay.
Just ask.
All right, thank you.
If I could just add, Mayor, to the questions that were raised by Commissioner Werner, I've got a meeting coming up next week, I think it is, with the MDOT TSC. So hopefully I can report back in the next week or so a little more of where that whole process is at.
Thank you.
I think I'd be comfortable with a little more information as well. But does that hold anything up?
What is the grant deadline?
When's the grant deadline?
Like tomorrow or something. I don't know. It's pretty quick.
I believe it was June 30th, so we're in that grace period where you submit the grant and they let you submit supplemental materials, so.
Okay. So you've already submitted for the grant?
MDOT has
Submitted the grant?
not the city, just to be clear.
Yeah.
If you want. So we just recently got our first kind of base plan estimate from our consultant, identified the budget issue. So brainstorming came up with the possibility of applying for a TAP grant with about 4 weeks to pull it together. So we hurried it together, requested this resolution of support from you guys, partnering with the township on it. So yeah, we're just in a grace period, like John said.
Can I ask a question before you sit back down really quick?
Yes, of course.
Because the way I'm looking at this is, no, we don't have as much information. In any of the plans that you foresee, and I realize that time and things chip away, do you anticipate anything that's already, any trail, sidewalk, et cetera, on that side of the street or on the road right now getting smaller?
No.
Okay. So for me, that is the reassurance that I needed that this will only get better in some way, shape, or form. So I will make the motion that the resolution in support of TAP project implementation M72, M22, reconstruction in City of Traverse City and Elmwood Township be adopted.
Support.
Yeah, the motion is support. Any other folks have a comment? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Doug Kimball, 523 North Spruce Street. So I'm confused. I've gone to the meetings to see the plan, and the plans that I have seen, one of them was to move the highway closer to Bay Street. And then another plan was, it's only going to move maybe just a little bit closer to Bay Street. And so I'm confused, but I want to, I at least want to comment, assuming that it is going to get moved. So in the past 3 years or more, the parkway has become a major truck thoroughfare. And all throughout the day, there's a parade of semis of all sorts, gravel trains, ready-mix concrete, logging trucks, trucks hauling construction equipment, and fruit. And this is all throughout the day, every day. And most of them are engine braking between M72 and Division Street. And there's no reason. It's just, at most a half mile. I don't think it's a half mile. I think it's maybe a quarter mile. And they're just going from one stoplight to another. They don't need an engine brake, but everybody does the engine braking. Okay? And so that's a lot of noise. And we don't want it brought closer to our homes. And the TART trail in that section sees little use about 10 months of the year. And there's trail on both sides of that truck thoroughfare, also known as Grandview Parkway. And so it appears to me that they're going to move 4 lanes of heavy traffic closer to our homes. And for some tourists, for some tourists for a couple months of the year. And this is serious. I invite any of you to come to our home and watch how little use there is of that trail right now, but how much traffic is on the truck thoroughfare. And you'll see that it's noisy, and it's a hugely imposing negative presence to bring that traffic closer to us, just to see it, just to impose on our neighborhood and our quality of life that we've come to expect. And that's pretty much where I'll leave it. I had some more, but since I don't know what the plan is, I'll let it go. But we don't want the road move closer to our homes, okay? I think I'm making that clear.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just Reed, 6'3", Kaiser Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. I often use the Tart Trail if I'm going to Suns Bay. I've seen it used heavily. And the comment about the engine brakes that come down off from M72, well, MDOT has looked about putting a roundabout over there to make traffic flow fairly easy. So that mitigates some of the brake issues with the trucks, with the noise. So thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Yes, ma'am.
As a resident of the Slabtown neighborhood whose house is less than a half a block from Bay Street, I am awakened every morning by the engine brakes coming down 72 to the 22 intersection. That is, I know what time it is by the sound of the Elmer's trucks going through that intersection. As Mr. Reed pointed out, the current MDOT design with the roundabout there, I am hopeful that will mitigate some of that behavior and that noise pollution in our neighborhood. You'll find very few people who live closer to Bay Street and the Parkway than I do. And I can tell you, looking out my back patio, that that section of the Tart Trail is heavily used, as is the sidewalk on the other side, which is incredibly congested and not particularly safe for the kind of transit that's happening there. So I do plan to support this because I've long thought that the place for the trail would be closer to the water as opposed to having the vehicles alongside it. So, and I'm saying that as someone who is directly impacted by both the Tart Trail use, which I see as being used year-round, and also by the noise that is happening with the trucks that are coming down 72. Thank you.
Just because it was brought up, and I know that it would be a separate issue, but other municipalities banned engine braking, you know, and I wouldn't be above having that conversation here.
It's on my list.
I'll have to look at it.
I thought for sure years ago we did put a ban on engine
Oh, we
braking.
might already have one.
Yeah,
Maybe
years
it's an
ago.
enforcement issue.
Huh?
Yeah, and just to, I just
It
wanted.
was because of coming down off the peninsula during Cherry Festival. There was a large braking then, and I think we did put a ban in place, so, okay.
And just to clarify really quickly, this is in support of the TAP project. So TAP specifically is for alternative transportation, so the street discussion and all of that is still to come. This is us supporting a grant just for the trail part of that.
Yeah,
So that's, everything comes in bits and pieces, and to Commissioner Warner's part, at varying times sometimes, but that's what we're tackling tonight, not the whole street yet, so.
Okay. All right. We've had comment. We have a motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Covert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, item number 2 under new business is consider authorizing a contract for professional schematic design services and construction design phase services for our West End mixed-use development project. Nate, or you?
Yes, just briefly, and then I'm going to ask Director Dorenzi and Director Lodge to come up to the podium to better introduce this. But this has been a very collaborative effort amongst the staff to take this project and I think turn it into a better concept from our perspective, bringing it about to be more of a housing discussion than a parking discussion. Obviously, parking is a big piece of this, but with that, I'd like to ask Jean to come up and walk us through what this step in the process is.
Yes, thank you, Nate. I appreciate that introduction. And this has been a recommendation that's going to be coming before you from the Downtown Development Authority Board and the interview team that I've outlined in my memo that was with Tim Lodge, our city engineer, our city planner, Sean Winter, our mobility and transportation director, Nicole Van Ness, Kelly Dunham, who is the Beta director, and myself. And this is coming after the project. This project has been identified in 1997. And in 2014, we started the land assembly. We, being the DDA and the city of Traverse City, started that land assembly in 2014 and completed the land assembly in December of 2022 with the city commission completing the final stage of that land assembly in December. In April of '23, we presented an outline of components that were in the which would be in the RFP. We presented that to the City Commission, and the city really identified what are the elements that could be in the RFP, and that it ended up to be the mixed-use West End development project. And that RFP identified that we really wanted to have a mixed use with commercial, housing, and parking components. It wasn't led by parking, it was led by a mixed-use piece. And with that RFP, we had 5 responses to that RFP. We interviewed all 5 teams and are recommending that Fishbeck and Cornerstone Architect be entered into for a contract for the engineering and design component. In addition to the Fishbeck, I wanted to, we have Fishbeck here as well as Cornerstone Architect, but one of the pieces that we really are looking for is a public-private partnership as well, that we have done different public-private partnerships, but really want to dive into how we can do things differently when it comes to the housing elements and the parking as well. That it doesn't have to be a standalone facility, it can be a mixed-use facility, and how can the city and the DDA partner with different housing elements within the downtown area. We also have the sustainability components that has been identified and will always be identified. It's your goals, it's our goals, and that we're meeting. And we're also looking at the parking structure to be repurposed. That was also an element that we've identified, that you identified as well. And Fishbeck is one that has repurposed parking structures in the past. We are ready to present this on behalf. We have the city engineer. It was a recommendation on behalf of the DDA board that we enter into this contract. The other important piece is that this is a 2-phased approach. The first phase is the schematic design, and the schematic design would get us to the full cost of the project. We have a lot of costs that have been identified, that it'll cost X amount of dollars, but we don't know what the costs are until we have the schematic design in our hand, which should be by December of 2023. That first phase would be $383,570, and then there's really going to be a pause, and that pause will be able to identify how this can be funded, and we'll know how with the public-private partnership and other components through tax increment financing and that public-private partnership. The second phase would be construction and design, which would occur only after the notice of intent period has passed, and then that cost is for the construction design, which is $1,207,571. So we're asking for the total contract, knowing that it would be in 2 different phases of $1,591,141. As I indicated, Fishbeck and Cornerstone are here. They're happy to answer questions about their experience and expertise that they are bringing to the table, as well as the interview team is here as well with Sean Winter, your planner, city engineer Lodge, and Nicole Van Ness. And I'm happy to answer any questions from you as well.
Just before we turn it back over, a couple points that I want to add of why the Fishbeck team stood out to us. Gene spoke multiple times about this idea of doing this parking structure different, doing it as a public-private collaboration. Fishbeck's team specifically brought talent to the team that has dealt with putting together those different pieces to make it work. But I think the other pivotal thing that really set them apart is, well, as you may know, there's new brownfield legislation that makes housing an eligible activity. We are still trying to get our arms wrapped around this, but one of the people on their team is at the forefront of those conversations and was at the table during those conversations. I've worked with her a little bit before in the past on brownfield, so I know what her level of expertise is. I think that's going to be an invaluable addition to the team. The last thing I just want to mention is we've been talking about housing over and over and over and over, and we've got a lot more discussions coming on tools that you have asked for that we're ready to bring forward. I've heard some discussion in the community about, you know, you're spending this money and the future of the DDA is up in the air. Well, whatever you happen to think about this, I would encourage the commission to still look at this as a housing project first, because even if you're doing this level of investment on preliminary or schematic design, you're still creating a design and an asset that can be used to facilitate the types of development that you want to see, to bring forward the types of housing solutions that you have been hoping for within an area of the community. Now that you have assembled all of that land, you now have leverage to help steer that development, whether ideally with the DDA as a partner at the table to make something actually workable. But again, we've got these other tools that the Fishbeck team will bring to this conversation to help make a true mixed-use project a possibility. So thank you very much. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, again, this was heavily discussed at our DDA meeting. As one of the questions I asked is at what level of design, percentage of design does schematic get us to? And it's at the 30%. Having gone through design built items in the past, that is the percentage of when the engineers, the folks who are putting this work together, the architects and all of them, could come up with a very solid number that will then be used as part of the TIF plan rewrite that will have to be approved by this body in the end, which also could be subject to referendum. You know, so there's two of them, and also it gives us a number that it gives everyone a number that if the elected body at that time wants to move forward with both of those, then they could do a resolution of intent, which also opens up the period for a referendum period. And then if that happens, then nothing moves until everything's been approved, either no referendum or a public vote takes place, and you know, so the only thing we're really out of pocket on in the very beginning is $383,570. Now, in the past, when parking decks were constructed, we were usually at a much higher level of design before we ever went out for resolutions of intent. They are, so that way you would have a very solid number. At least you know what you have to ask for if you're going to bond for it. I feel very comfortable where this is at, and we're moving forward. You're going to have to move forward sooner or later if you want to get to the ultimate question. So that's kind of where we are. I was wanting to do this 5 years ago, but we never got there.
Bids would have been cheaper 5 years ago.
Everything's
Maybe, but we wouldn't have had we didn't have the land that we have today to deal with. It gives us more options, such as housing and other things that we didn't have then.
I'm willing to make a motion unless someone
Okay.
has some reason not to. I move that the City Commission approve to enter into contract with Fishbeck, Inc. and Cornerstone Architects for a cost not to exceed $1,591,141, with $383,570.
Whoa, you're doing the wrong motion.
That was one from the,
You do the motion under the cover memo.
first page.
Oh, I don't know where it is then.
It's the
Somebody
very
else do
first
it.
page
I'll
of
make
that,
the-
of that item.
Okay, go for it, Mike.
Okay.
Oh, there it is, sorry.
Oh, do you want to take it? Take it from the top.
I've got it.
Linda. Okay.
Okay, scratch that last thing. I move that the mayor and city clerk execute a two-phase contract, am I right? With Fishbeck, Inc. and Cornerstone Architects in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,591,141, with Phase 1 services being schematic design services, costing $383,570, and Phase 2 services being construction design services costing $1,201,571, with the contract to be structured so that only Phase 1 is authorized immediately, with the city manager to execute a notice to proceed with Phase 2 only if related referendum petitions are not filed regarding bond issuance, with such contract subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, with Phase 1 costs to come from the Downtown Development Authority's TIF 97 budget.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there
I'll
support?
second. I was
Okay.
going to make the motion, so I was going to let you second if you wanted to.
Okay, okay, we have a motion. Yes, Mr. Warner.
Yeah, probably no surprise to folks that I'll be voting against this, but it has given me opportunity to reflect. And self-reflection, I'm an odd duck. I'm both too far right and too far left to support this. Too far right in that I guess I'm a fiscal conservative now, and the DDA has provided absolutely zero in terms of a business plan, an ROI, anything that looks at why invest taxpayer dollars to the tune of $50 million over the life of this for a parking garage. At least make
Okay,
an argument for it. Nope, I'm still going. Yeah, you can argue with the 50 million, but I'll bet you a milkshake that it's going to cost 50 million once you take into account lost tax revenue because we're chewing up private property to build this thing. So that's why I'm too far right to support this, because there's no just fiscal accountability, just being fiscally responsible. You don't have to be fiscally conservative, just be fiscally responsible. And then I'm too far left because I'm a radical tree hugger environmentalist. I quoted it earlier in the meeting. We have a city commission strategic priority to view all of our goals and actions through the lens of climate impacts. So we're going to build a parking garage to last the next 50, 60 years. Yeah, it might be repurposed, whatever. And that's somehow we're looking at it through the lens of climate impacts and saying, yeah, more cars, we love it, good, let's move on. So too far right, too far left, but they don't cancel each other out. I oppose it from both views.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else got a comment? Okay.
I'll just say that,
Hang on. Okay.
I'll just say that the motion before us is to spend $383,570 and see where that's going. Will that give us a $50 million price tag? Maybe. Will it give us a $20 million price tag? Maybe. But we don't, to the point here, the conjecture of our dual-hatted colleague is just as much conjecture as he's saying that we're taking by entering into this. What I do know is if we go through with this, there's a higher chance that we'll take parking off the water and that we'll redo some of the other issues that I see environmentally in our downtown that aren't going anywhere anytime soon if we don't do something else. We can contend that later, and that's, as Commissioner Warner's made clear, he will not be supporting this. I'd like to have some numbers and some facts to see where we're going and then be able to make decisions going forward from that. Right now, everything is conjecture because you can't guess on what a building or a footprint or an envelope is going to look like until you actually get some pens to paper. So, and by that I mean drafting pens, not just number pens. So that's why I guess I'm taking a slightly different view of the same idea.
Yes, sir.
Can I respond? Thank you for bringing it up because, yes, we might end up taking some parking off the water, but that's the argument, the only argument that's been used by the DDA. But to me, that's a clear reflection of their lack of understanding of climate change and the climate crisis. Protecting water quality is important, and I don't want to throw that under the bus, but protecting water quality and addressing the climate crisis are two very different things. There can be overlap at times, but the DDA truly does not understand the climate crisis.
Okay. That's one opinion. I'm going to open this.
Clerk has her.
I'm going to open this. What?
I would like to make a clarification in the motion. The number for Phase 2 should be $1,207,000 not 1. There was a typo in the motion, so it's a 7, not a 1.
Thank you.
I will still support the motion reflecting that
Yeah.
number.
And I'll amend that motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
That's all I got.
Oh, it's the things we got to live with. I'm going to open this for public comment.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Minkin, 628 West 13th, Traverse City resident, originally from Bessemer, Michigan, Speed Boy, named after Henry Bessemer, creator of the Bessemer process, which is a mining term, but we can get into Upper Peninsula trivia later, which I love talking about. But I just wanted to voice my strong opposition to the parking deck project in general, because I feel it goes against the two main concerns that the City Commission and the city as a whole have. First is housing. Every parking spot that we develop in our very limited space within city limits means that's one less space for housing, one less apartment, which is, you know, something we can ill afford. Traverse City is surrounded literally by charter townships, which means we cannot expand outwards. And so every spot that we use for parking means one less spot for people who want to make our community their home. The second is environmental impact. As Commissioner Warner mentioned, that more parking spots, more concrete, and more cars, that goes completely against our environmental protection, which the City Commission has mentioned on numerous occasions is very important to it. I live in Central Neighborhood, and I bike everywhere I can and walk. I bike to this meeting. And I don't think adding more and more cars downtown is going to do anything to alleviate environmental concerns in our community. In fact, that just means more smog, more noise. In fact, it kind of reminds me of freeway expansion. Everybody
address your comments this way.
Sorry. My apologies.
No, it's okay.
It reminds me of freeway expansion. Everybody talks about, oh, well, if we add more lanes to a freeway, it's going to alleviate traffic. It does for a very brief period of time, but what happens is people are like, oh, well, it's now easier to get to somewhere via cars, so let's, take our car instead of, at, the most direct time instead of planning alternative times or using public transportation or biking or walking. So, like I said, if you build more parking decks and parking spots, that's just going to bring in more cars instead of people maybe biking into town or walking into town, which is far more preferable. And in terms of the mixed use, does anybody think of any housing component that this parking deck project will involve? Does anybody think that's going to involve long-term housing? I'm just going to take a shot in the dark and guess that the proposed development will be maybe a small fixed number of units for a percentage of income for worker housing, but the vast majority, if not all the units, will eventually become like the Ivy building, where it's short-term rentals, which means you haven't increased the housing stock one iota. So, and there is a cost to this in the short term, $380-some thousand or so, I believe, was the initial for phase one. That's not a small chunk of change, and that's taxpayer dollars, so I don't think it should be, well, it's only $300 and some thousand. Taxpayer dollars are important, so thank you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. Pity I only have 3 minutes to talk, but number one, I was stunned that the panel to choose the architect and engineers to design this did not include even one voted-in elected official, which is you. I was stunned at least 2 of the people why they were even on the decision-making group. Number 3, the DDA only recently started talking about housing at all, and suddenly one of the DDA members said, hey, why don't we put some in the parking deck? And I went to a recent DDA meeting. I asked the question, how much more is this design going to cost because you threw in the complexity of housing as opposed to just building a parking deck, which is a totally different argument. Secondly, you've got the Haggerty deck is almost 80% empty all the time now, and it probably will be permanently, and it's only a few blocks away. Why don't you just create a mini shuttle bus service from there downtown for a few $100,000? Doesn't that make sense? But the biggest thing in my minimized 3-minute discussion is the residents have to wait, 10 months to go through the effort of doing not one but two referendums on this. The referendum on the intent to bond is pretty clear forward on how it does, how the citizens have to go through the process to get it done. The big problem is once you pass the ordinance, it'll probably be at the same meeting to extend TIF 97 for another 30 years or whatever. From that moment on, the residents have a right to do the second referendum, which you talked about, but there's no time limit. So how are you going to prove the balance of the contract for an additional 1.2 million, knowing that the residents can take 6 months, a year, 2 years, or whatever they want? Go read. I just read the chart. Read it. Chapter 15 in the charter. So that question has to be addressed, and if it isn't, I can only see somebody stepping in and taking it to court over it. So we got 10 months to sort that out, so why don't we do that portion of the argument between now and then rather than at the last minute. Thank you.
Okay.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Permit 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. To say that the homeless population and also the affordability, putting a parking deck is not the best use, because indicating earlier that you guys have a homeless issue, and that is a complexity in itself. However, the burden is that we have can't build anything above 60 feet. You also you can't lure any contractors or any developers to come in and say, I can go ahead and I can build this for a housing space, but in order for me to cover the difference of the income rated apartments is I have to build a little bit higher. So that does not work in anybody else's favor. So I hope that the 60 feet limit goes away, but I'm hoping that the parking deck is just some more housing. Thank you.
And a pleasant good evening. I'm Jason Allen, lifelong resident. Grew up instead of in Bessemer in the old McCool house and enjoyed the canning operations for generations in our neighborhood. I rise in support of this proposal because of the following, and I'd encourage you to go back and review documentation that took place in 2003 with the bipartisan land use report that came out. Local residents, some deceased, but including Keith Charters, Ms. Rustum, Hans Voss, all participated in this and had these core values. These core values included making better use of public infrastructure, providing new tools, which we are going to be doing here for affordable housing, and increasing the compactness of mixed use, and encouraging private investment. We know that since 1970, the population of Grand Traverse County was at that point in time 37,000 people. We are now close to 100,000, and about 25% of the commerce in the four-county area occurs within 8 miles of downtown Traverse City. These are all critical issues, and I respect the aspect of car storages, but when you sit down and take a look at the leadership from the General Motors Corporation, the Ford Motor Company, and the Chrysler Motor Company, Stellantis, still 1 out of every 4 revenue-sharing dollars in the state come from those people, and that investment will continue on. I encourage the vote yes on this as the first step, and we recognize whether we were looking at the 1964 urban renewal project paving over the Boardman River or the ill-fated Pennies project, which then ultimately went out to Grand Traverse Mall, which created even more sprawl and urban impact, that we'd be very deliberative, but we have to go to the first step. So I thank you for your leadership, your involvement in our community, and have a wonderful evening.
Anyone else?
Mitchell Blue, 10565 East Cherry Bend Road. I'm also in support like Mr. Allen said. And, from getting the process started, spent 15 years in government guaranteed lending. And I know that you got to kind of put a plan together, and there's a lot of steps for that. And so I think this is a great first step to figuring that out. I also, seeing exactly what Jason said in terms of the Pennies project, having visited Toronto and other places that, really focus on their downtown. And then when the mall happened, clearly that didn't stop it. In addition to that, we're going to be a new resident down there in the Forefront building. And so we've got 50 employees going down into that building. Unfortunately, all 50 of those employees can't bike here. They live, Kingsley, Buckley, Interlochen, Beulah, et cetera. And so, yes, there is the Old Town parking deck. We will be utilizing that, but it would be nice to see another parking deck, since transportation and stuff, Tim seems to, I appreciate the fact that, you bike. There was only 5 bikes in the bike rack down there, and a lot more people than that here in this room. I like to bike too. When I come into town, I bike into town, but it's just not a feasible thing for everybody. And that also doesn't mean that it can't be green, potentially with, electric cars and other things. I like the fact that the project's going to be, mixed use and the public-private piece of it. I really think that it's a lot more collaborative than any of the first 2 attempts with the deck, and so therefore I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We've had the discussion. Yes.
Yeah, a great opportunity to address another topic, which was brought up in public comment there, that very clearly this helps enable sprawl because it allows people that are working downtown to live in Kingsley, Buckley, wherever else it might be. And that's sprawl. I mean, that's what it's about. So until we as a community decide we're going to do things differently, that's what we're enabling. And we're doing it through socialism. So we have a former state senator representative standing up there from a one party advocating for a socialist approach because this is taxpayer supported car storage. It is. The $50 million that's invested does not come back. There's no return on investment that way. And so this is, here's your free handout. And the reason other people didn't bike here tonight is because it's free parking. We have free parking out there. So again, until there's a change in the structure and there's some incentive and it's made easier, things don't change. So yeah, we can just keep going along the way we've been going along, or we can ask for something different.
Okay. Again, the $50 million is one point. I don't know if it's 50 million or not, so let's don't take that as being the gospel at this point. All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Stanley? Yeah. Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Mayor?
Yes. All right. Well, that was all the interesting stuff tonight.
Wait
Oh,
a
the next
minute.
one's pretty interesting.
Poor Amy Sell's been sitting back there for hours.
Are you saying we're taking a
She's
3-minute
been back.
break?
She's been there for about 3 hours now. I mean, because I saw her about 6 o'clock. Let's take about a 5-minute break, please.
Banyo time. I'm dehydrating myself until the flight's over.
I do that. Just sit there by your brother.
No, I do that too. I do that too. Nobody, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, they're built for somebody's so bad. I know, but let me phrase that. They're built for somebody's 4 times to comfortably sit.
But to get like
almost 8
Okay.
Oh, I see, yeah, so, yeah.
We're back in session. I asked Ms. Sell to join us up here so she didn't have to stand over there, so we take it from there. Okay. Next, we're going to have a presentation by Ms. Sell of Amy Sell Talent, an update as it relates to our executive search. So it's all yours.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor and Commission. Great to see you all again. In your packet, you received information about a rubric, the job posting, assessment plan, and timeline. So I'm not going to go over it verbatim, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the highlights and what I hope to achieve tonight. We were able to complete 22 intake interviews with stakeholders, including elected officials and staff, and from that got a sense of what the qualities and experiences that would be desirable for this role would be. And we kind of boiled that down using phrases and language that we heard into a rubric or a list of criteria where we focused on one column being the must-have criteria that we are really going to use as our target for candidates, as well as qualities that I would put in more of the ideal category that are kind of almost bonus points, but wanted to really try to align this group on those must-haves so that when we come back with candidates, they might not have every little thing checked off, but that's really what we're going to be going after. And so my goal tonight is to align you all on what our target is through this rubric, as well as the assessment plan that we developed based very specifically around, I think, the opportunities and some challenges that we see that will be facing the next city manager. I also proposed a timeline, including first round interviews on September 7th that would include a panel of the commission, a panel with staff members, and then I recommend, given that there are going to be some assumed some new people will be running for office in November, that any candidates are included in a community reception where we can get feedback from them, that also can be part of the knowledge base that you all have when making the decision on who to move forward with a candidate, with the eventual new city manager.
I was going to say, do you want questions during the presentation or wait till the end?
Yeah, I'm just about done, and then
Okay,
I have
then I
the
can wait.
job posting. So again, my goal here is to confirm and align these documents so that I leave here with a clear plan. So again, happy to make any edits or take any questions or have a discussion. Thank you.
Sorry, I jumped in.
No, thanks.
So question I had though is it says first round interviews September 7th. And because once we start doing public meetings, public interviews, that's out there for the public. So any people applying would have to be publicly known, both to their employers and to our public. So are you, at the first round interview, are you anticipating that to be whittled down to like 3 or 4 people then?
So generally I present 7 to 10 candidates for you, and that information is provided would be August 18th. At that point, there are candidates, and if they request confidentiality under the Open Meetings Act, that it's acceptable to review the application materials and to have a discussion in closed session. But coming out of that session, then the rest is public. So then and they know, so then usually if 7 to 10 candidates are discussed, usually 3 or 4 candidates are determined to come back, and those 3 to 4 candidates would be public. Their names and information would be public, and the interviews with elected officials would be public after that point.
And that's basically what I was looking for, so I appreciate that, because that's a really tight timeline, so I appreciate that we'll be able to get all those steps to that point for the September meeting to be basically the kind of finalist public. So that's great, thank you.
It strikes me as a very tight timeline as well. You really think we can get to interviews by August 18th?
Well, I would be providing you with information about the candidates on August 18th, and then interviews would happen on September 7th.
Okay,
What I'm
that's right.
proposing.
That's right.
And this is the timeline that I've used in 12 or 13 other city manager type searches. Once candidates are, because it is a public process, oftentimes candidates, when they're in the mix, they're considering multiple opportunities, and I don't want to let any of them go by and lose out on them to other candidates, other communities, so that's why I try to be as aggressive as possible on the timeline.
I had two other questions. I was wondering where the compensation amount came from.
Yes.
It seems low to me, and I wondered if that was, who gave you that?
I did get input from city staff on that range, but I'd be happy to increase it. That gives me even more.
I would love for us to discuss that, and
Great.
then Commissioner Warner and I were speaking. I hope, I don't know that this is true, that we have a better link than TC Tourism to show somebody at about our city. Is there something else besides TC Tourism?
TraverseCityMI.gov.
Is there a link? What?
TraverseCityMI.gov.
Yes, that
I
would
don't
be
know. Maybe just something besides that? I don't know. It just seems
Well,
like.
Region, you can take this magazine with you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I know
Well,
that I've
what I
seen
would
something,
say-
but I couldn't remember
What I would say too is to that, if you don't mind me
No,
piggybacking really
no.
quick, is sure, we can put the TraverseCityMI.gov, our site, but I would also encourage them to say, also to get a feel for downtown, check out downtown social media accounts, downtown TC social media accounts, maybe Creative Coast and Traverse Connect, but like, again, this gets into wanting people who kind of can follow things, so, or not follow things, sorry, but are kind of tapped into different sources.
Yeah.
So
A few different
I would say ours is the main homepage, but maybe encourage them too to kind of check out some of the regional leaders' social medias and things like that to see what's really going on day to day here. Because even websites are pretty, they're not static, but they're not the most engaging either.
And then
So, yeah, it's a
Christine, can I
business card,
follow up with
exactly.
you on any specifics? Make sure I get those specific.
Who
links.
does, I mean, when Munson's showing their doctors around, how do they do it?
Yeah,
When
there's
they're
got
trying
to
to
be
recruit
something else.
doctors,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's got to.
If there's not, then it's high time to get that started. Okay, so let's go back to compensation and who gets to say how much?
We do.
We do.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That is when you pick your final candidate, you negotiate.
But we did have like a high end for when we did Brandy, for example. So I'd be curious what kind of, if you looked at regional impact, et cetera, what the averages are in like MML.
It varies significantly,
Okay.
and it's been increasing rapidly in different pockets when there's been a turnover. One example I'll use is Portage, Michigan. A community of about 60,000. A year and a half ago, when they did their search, their prior city manager was making 150,000. When they posted it, they upped it to 200,000,
Okay.
and just within the last 2 weeks, they increased that person's wage up to 210.
Okay.
So, but that's pretty high. I also did, when I did the city of St. Clair Shores, another 60,000 person community. When I did their search about 3 or 4 years ago, they were in the 120 to 130 range, and then a year ago, they upped it to 150 to 160. So it really varies. I mean, to be around Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, and Portage are above 200. It's rare to be above that, but if we are, it definitely gives you a much broader pool in a very competitive search.
And then I just had a question too. That's a pretty wide range when in hearing, and I'm sure anybody who's going to be applying would know that the, kind of an area is going to land on a kind of a ballpark. So, does it make sense to have it be a $40,000 range, or would it make more sense for us to say something like 170 to 190 or 165 to 185 or something, and tighten that up to show that that's not just what we're willing to pay, but also maybe as a signal of that's the level of expertise or professionalism that we're looking to have come. So yes, we don't mind if people aren't exactly a city manager or an assistant city manager right now, but also if you're, I don't know positions, and I don't want to disregard because every city to city is one, but if you're somebody who's had very minimal, maybe worked part-time and minimal supervision, we're not necessarily looking for somebody to come in and apply at the 150 range for a bargain. So just, is there a good range, tighter range make more sense for attracting the right people?
I think the higher, the people are going to look at the upper end in terms of what it is. So whether it's a tight range or a wide
Okay.
range, I think the upper end is what people are looking for. But based on my conversations with folks, I think there's a desire to consider people that might be at an assistant city manager or might be progressing nicely, or somebody that's really, really sharp and aggressive and might not have a career history and a salary history that is huge, but brings a lot of potential. And so having a wider range might be completely appropriate based on where people are.
Okay.
I'm okay on, so I'm comfortable with a wider range, but I do think increasing the upper end will get more people excited.
Okay.
Can we push that upper limit then from,
Yes.
up from 185?
I think so.
I think so.
What would we be comfortable setting that at? And does our interim city
I like
manager have any?
190.
I think
I do
190.
too. I like a
I was
good
thinking
round
190
number.
as well. I think
I
Richard's
like a
ideal.
round number like that.
160 to 190?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why, it just sounds.
Me
good.
neither.
Oh, just as an unrelated to the wage, but the community setting brought up by a comment that was made. You do mention outdoor recreation, you mentioned schools. You do not mention that we do have a top-class hospital, which, not saying
true.
that people come to a place because they know that they will get prompt service for a broken bone, but that is one of the assets of our community.
Well, and trailing,
also a major employer.
trailing
Yes.
spouses too.
Yeah.
If somebody's in the health profession, the spouse might be,
Absolutely.
so.
And that
So-
was one, oh, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
should it be 190 or should it be 200?
190.
190 is fine.
190.
They can negotiate.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Tim.
No.
And I will add the top-notch hospital. Yep.
The part that's about the community, if that's really like essentially the cover letter for the job description, to me, that's like TC Tourism, which we already addressed the link, but we're on so many other lists. Like, to me, this is what Downstate thinks of Traverse City. We want what Traverse City thinks of Traverse City. So the Munson Hospital, and like, we are the medical capital of the North. We seem to have lots of attorneys too. We're probably the legal capital of the North. And we've made other lists, and I know like Warren Call and his folks, they've been pushing hard for a diverse economy and that sort of thing. Like, yes, we're not saying we're not a tourist town, but we're trying to be so much more. And so if that could be captured somehow, that yep, we don't have to ignore it and pretend we're not a tourist,
Well,
but
and
we
almost-
want to be so much more than that.
Yeah.
Sorry, almost nothing in the first paragraph is actually in Traverse City.
That's, well, and yeah, because I was gonna say, well, we have a ski area, but, yeah, but I
We
would
do have
say that
beaches.
maybe, and this sounds particular, but because we have such a tight partnership with them, I think something about world-class or regional, outstanding regional recreational trails. And I only say that because I know, for example, we've been talking a lot about the UP tonight, so let's just keep it going. That the Iron Heritage Trail that they've been building out in the UP, they've really looked at Traverse City and brought TARDA in to consult. And so I think that there's stuff like that too that people might be working on. Again, trailing spouses or experience they've had, there might be more collaborative projects like that could even appeal to them in the first read, where maybe they haven't had a lot of experience with ski areas or wineries.
And we did make like some number one list for our bicycle network just in the past couple of weeks.
Number
Like,
one in the
that's
state.
a real thing you could
Well,
toss in there.
Little
somehow.
Big City is known for being bike and pedestrian
Right,
friendly.
no, that's there, but if you
Yeah.
reference that
Our walkability
top 10
score,
list
walkability score is a
versus
good
the
one.
cocaine top 10 list.
I like the cocaine top list.
We're a party city with our casino in town and other
And 2
things
strip
that are in
clubs.
town.
I'm still trying to find a brothel.
I know, right? But yeah, I guess one thing I would say right now, just while we're all kind of reviewing our thoughts in our mind, I think that the rubric that was put out was really excellent of, I know what I thought and what some other people mentioned, they had mentioned. I guess the one thing I would say, since it has been brought up that people might be watching our meetings currently that would be interested in applying is, in my vision, there's, I think it gets kind of covered in the progressive municipal leadership experience, but really somebody who comes in ready to make change and stick and be and you mentioned that, we mentioned in another one of the thick-skinned, like those two things. And not that those, I'm not trying to scare people off with that, but I think that's the kind of bold, I guess I'd say that's, to me, the part of the bold leadership I would be looking for in an ideal candidate. Somebody who's saying, listen, I know they're trying to do these things, and it doesn't mean to the citizens, that's not saying I'm looking for somebody who's going to try to ramrod things down the public's throats that they maybe don't want, but it's somebody who's going to be willing to step up and say, okay, this is a small town, but why can't we be more world-class with our bike lane, or our bike network? Why can't we do more of this? And here's how we're going to do it, and over the next couple of years, here's how I think we can do it. So just since we're having a public meeting about it, I thought I'd put that out there in the public.
All right, so down on the about you for the next city manager, something that is, I know this is kind of splitting hairs, but I haven't heard people use the term townies here in Traverse City.
Yeah.
So if we could just put residents or something like that, just very plain and vanilla, I know, but.
That's a good point.
I think that's right. I noticed that too.
And then, yeah.
Although I do use the word townies.
Oh, see, I don't.
Oh,
But I use the word
haven't heard
fudgies instead of tourists, so maybe locals/fudgies, I'm just
And
kidding.
then in your,
Townies, fudgies, yeah, go with
and this is
that.
just me, so only one person, but maybe I'll get his support. Under infrastructure needs, sanitary sewer is kind of
Yes.
high up there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, oh, I agree.
Because that's something you have to have particular interest in.
Especially when we,
When we mentioned the other two types of pipes that are.
Right, and that's it. The other pipes are there, so
Yeah,
if we could,
pipes.
they don't want to be left out.
It's a series of tubes.
Be pipe agnostic, yeah.
And then, it's in here several places, like a reference to a community-embraced vision and that sort of thing, like in a plan. Is that potentially the master plan that's being worked on, or is this some separate plan that might get developed? Like, it's fine either way, but are we adding a little confusion and nebulousness by saying, oh, and then you're going to come up with this plan and work with this body and.
It was, the themes around planning that came up were more in general, like, what is our plan and how do we get there? Not necessarily, the master plan.
Okay.
But, like, if we have, like, it could be capital improvement plan or streets plans, but just the desire to have a little bit more of a cohesive plan. So
Where we're going.
Where we're going,
Okay.
so finding someone that can kind of bring everybody together to figure out what that plan is, because this person's role is to really work, you all set the vision and policy, but for someone to be able to kind of take that, put together a plan that's actionable, and then put the pieces together to be able to execute on that plan. And so this kind of project management theme, longer term planning, bringing people together to align as much as possible on what that direction, were themes that came across repeatedly that I was trying to incorporate into the documents.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just remembered one thing that I had my notes written down and to bring them with me. The timeline part, the first round interviews, going back to that really quickly, I appreciate we had talked about doing like the community coffee or something where people would be invited to, we could kind of watch the person interact in real time. But for the the utility director, our TCLP director that we just hired, we also did kind of a speed date where everybody had a chance to sit down with every candidate for 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes, I can't remember what it was. But it was long enough.
Shortish, but
Yeah.
but long enough.
Yeah, shortish, but it allowed, I think, for some good conversations. Like, I know I talked to some people about who had kids, about the schools, not just, we have good school districts, but here, a little bit more information. And I thought it was a good way for them to kind of ask a little bit more questions about the people who live here, of what they'd be getting into as well. So I saw it beneficial for both sides. We got a little bit of their personality one-on-one, but then we also could kind of be their local guides to see if this was a place they wanted to land. So if that could be somehow worked in as we're looking at a timeline, even if it's a couple extra hours, I think it'd be worth the investment.
Great.
Do
I'll
we
definitely work with
suggest she
Christine to
call
get all that
Traverse
together.
Connect
No.
for another, who should she call other than the TC Tourism Bureau to get the selling points of Traverse City?
Hospital, like
Yeah,
I know the
Munson.
hospital, I
Hospital.
know
Yeah.
they've used like Hickory Hills before
Yeah.
as a selling point.
Maybe the college.
The Creative
Right.
Coast.
College, yeah.
I think
Try-
that's why we just looked at Christine.
It's out there,
They
I
can
know it's
call
out
them and
there. I
Find,
just can't
find
put
out
my
who they're
finger on it.
using and how they're doing it.
Christine, she's going to be
Yeah,
our,
call Christine.
she's
Christine.
our tourist
Christine's
bureau
on it.
person now.
Okay.
One other thing, under there, that one of the key items are, you look at all that, but under motorized, they gotta have the skill set to bring together the various units of government. I mean, a lot of these here, we're gonna be working with the county and 5 townships around us. And they've got to have that interpersonal skill that they're gonna have to, where they can't walk in and say, look, here I am, y'all got, no, that's
Yeah.
not. That is going to be a very critical skill, especially when you're dealing with the wastewater and some of the interlocal things that we work together on, so.
yeah, I think,
Also, under your master's degree, I think you should list an MPA or an MBA.
Or.
No,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
MPA or?
MPA or an MBA.
Oh, okay.
So, I think you ought to list, that's what's preferred. They may have different master's degrees, that's great if that works, but when they have years of experience, that will be fine too, so.
yeah, let me see if I'm missing
Yeah, one thing that I would love to see in there, whether it's the interview, the rubric, just someplace so that candidates see it, and hopefully, well, I know I'll ask it at some point, but how do they make an informed decision? Just an open-ended question. How do you make an informed decision? Or something like that. But that's just me.
You're going to do it anyway, so you might as well just say it, just.
Well, and you bring up a good point about the interview questions. So all the questions that I've listed here are things that I'm going to ask, and you will be able to hear their answers. But then there's the portion where you will interview them as well.
Mhm.
And I will provide draft questions for your consideration, but I will also make sure to add that one into that question as well.
Since this is a fast and furious timeline here that I have no doubt you can accomplish. So the draft questions, would we get to see them beforehand and maybe make some suggestions of more personalized ones that we'd like to see?
Definitely. I'll
Okay,
bring
great.
those with to the closed session meeting on the 28th.
Great.
Okay, so everybody please check your calendars and make sure on the 28th that you're going to be here.
28th of
August.
Yeah.
And September the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, we'll already
Wait a
have-
minute, August 28th is also the zoning discussion.
That's the study session. We can have a special meeting that's like 11 p.m. 11 a.m.
Confused
It's the
now.
introduction of the zoning discussion.
Yeah.
So that might even encourage us to continue the discussion on further.
Yeah,
We're
they
not-
can see how-
I
we don't
think
have to
that
rush to a vote.
Well,
Yeah,
no, this is, we can do that, but this will be happening afterwards, so,
Mhm.
no, it'll be fine.
Mhm.
Because this is not where they're going to be here. This is where you're going to bring 7 to 8
Mhm.
folks that you feel are comfortable with,
Right.
that we will have to weed down to some number.
Mhm.
And I will actually be providing to you via a portal their information on the 18th, so that you'll have time to look at the videos and review the information ahead of time.
So if we're asking you to revise somewhat the about the community portion to be more focused on what we as locals see as opposed to what people who are coming here as tourists see, your timeline involves the posting going live tomorrow.
Yes.
So
So
it-
We're going to have to bump that.
Maybe a day.
so does the request to revise this about the community part significantly change that? Okay.
No, I'm taking notes here, and I did, the third paragraph was all from the interview, so I did
Mhm.
try to incorporate. But, so I will make the additional changes. I have a few other tweaks to the posting, obviously, and then we'll get it posted with these changes in it, yes.
So one question is, we're talking about scheduling too, and I know others here are working in things. Should we be planning on taking a day off of work on the 7th to be able to observe all the parts? Obviously, we're not going to be able to do a community coffee, our round of interviews, and a speed date at 7 o'clock at night. So is that kind of, right now, tentatively, should we all kind of be avoiding scheduling meetings that day and things?
That would be ideal.
Okay, yep.
maybe the afternoon as well, or or maybe just the afternoon. Like
Okay.
if I did.
Just keep the day open for now, and then we'll whittle it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I do things on a rotating basis. I won't set the schedule until I know how many candidates I have, and then I play this Sudoku puzzle of figuring out staff, meetings, and interviews. But if everybody could take the afternoon off, then I could schedule the commission interviews in the afternoon, then have more of as well as the kind of meet and greet and speed rounds in there would work out.
Okay.
And then again, I'll be working closely with Christine on logistics.
I'm just going to hold the whole day just in case.
Yes, that would be great. The more degrees of freedom I have, the better.
Thursday.
Good?
Good? Anything else?
On the plus side, we might be done by 7
right,
p.m.
I
If
will-
anything else happens between now and 8 o'clock in the morning, send her an email.
Yep.
Do we need to make the resolution, though?
Excuse me?
There's a resolution in here we need to.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm
yeah.
very tired, but am I wrong?
No, it's right. It is there.
I'll make
with
the
the rest of us.
recommendation that the city manager job posting rubric, assessment plan, and timeline as presented be approved.
Support.
Good
I
job,
would say
Butch.
as amended.
No, I
but-
want
As amended.
As amended.
Okay, sorry.
As presented and
Yes.
amended, be approved.
I'll take that amendment.
Friendly, done.
Okay, Mitch made that. Who seconded? Please, I did. Okay. Any
Can I ask
questions?
one last
Yeah.
question?
No.
It's not going to change it. I'm just curious.
I got
Sorry.
5 minutes to leave.
So at the very top of the rubric, in the first must-have, the English teacher should have caught it.
Oh, God.
So
Sorry.
what is progressive describing?
So, and this means, it's not a political, like, progressive conservative. It's meaning someone that has moved through careers, has
Good
had
point.
strong career progression.
Okay, that was
I
one
did
possible
reference it.
understanding, but when I look at it, I'm like, progressive, okay.
Good question,
enough.
because I
You don't need
referenced
to
it
change it. I was just-
improperly.
I'm actually fine with it, so.
You're fine with it? Okay, you like ambiguity?
All definitions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ms. Sell, thank you for being with us tonight and hanging
Thanks,
in here.
Amy.
But you also got to see some of the
Yeah.
debate that's going to go on.
Well, and
That was
this-
the small
This
part.
is immensely helpful for me to just get the essence of the community and the issues to find someone that's going to be a great fit with.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
You're not
Thank you.
driving home tonight.
Oh, no.
Okay,
Good.
So
All right.
should we speed through our appointments?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost 10 o'clock. I turn into a pumpkin at 10 o'clock per one. You want to wrap through these, or we just
Yeah,
put them on the
we can
next
do 'em.
agenda?
Now let's go.
I know we have to do that first one because we're
Yeah, we do.
replacing them. to be honest.
First of all, we're only going to replace one. All right, I would recommend that this motion be, we know we have got to do accept the resignations, but we want to create an ad hoc committee to fill one slot. I figure that's the slot that was held by David Hassing. The other individual would only be appointed to serve for 2 months, because that position's up in November anyway. So let's just go for the one. We're going to have another ad hoc committee, because there's another individual, I think I had his name in here someplace, that is also up, and so we're going to have another ad hoc committee. So just
So
go
we
for
can
the
do one
Okay.
now and then 2 later.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. So I would just leave, on the second part of that, I would leave Heather Shaw's name off of it. Okay?
So
They can
we have to
everybody
accept
can
the
operate-
resignation, but not replace.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
So I'll
And
make the
They
motion.
can continue to serve until their replacement.
I will make the motion that the resignation of David Hassing and Heather Shaw from the City Planning Commission effective June 20th, 2023 be accepted. Further, an ad hoc interview committee be established to make a recommendation for one mayoral appointment to the Planning Commission with the terms expiring am I on the right one? Yep, November 13, 2023.
No, that's the one you're
Nope,
not
sorry.
gonna do.
Sorry, the term expiring then November 10th, 2025.
Mhm.
For a seat previously held by David Hassing, and that Mayor Lewis, Commissioner Treadwell, and Commissioner Warner be appointed to such committee, with Mayor Lewis to serve as chair of the committee and Commissioner Treadwell to serve as secretary.
Support.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right. Human Rights Commission, we need to accept the resignation of Susan auditors.
Yeah.
We thank you, Susan, for your service to our community for a number of years. We also have some additional terms that will be,
Just make it.
and we also have 3 other terms that we need to fill. So we got this term, and we got 3 others that need to be filled. So, yes.
I'll make the motion that the City Commission accept the resignation of Susan Odgers from the Human Rights Commission effective June 19, 2023, and that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendations for the vacancy term expiring June 30th, 2024, and 3 additional terms expiring June 30th, 2026, seats held by Jessica Forster, Corey Winfield, and Mary Jo
Zazueta.
Zazuata, thank you,
Mhm.
and that Mayor Lewis, Commissioner Werner, and Commissioner Wilson be appointed to such committee with Mayor Lewis as chair and Commissioner Wilson as secretary.
You're on the hook now.
Yeah, write down stuff.
We just got to do the minutes in the Google Doc.
Okay, we have a motion. Who supported that?
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Parks and Rec, we have a resignation of David Grams, and it appears that we also have to fill that slot, and 3 other appointments on that one.
Okay.
Ooh, Mitch Treadwell is one of those we got to fill.
Whoops.
That position too, huh? Fire him.
I'll make the motion that the
If
City
that's what the
Commission
board decides.
accept the resignation of David Grams from the Parks and Rec Commission effective July 1, 2023, and then an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendations regarding 3 appointments to the Parks and Recreation Commission, terms expiring September 1st, 2026, seats held by David Grams, Andrea Diebler, and Mitchell Treadwell, and that Mayor Pro Tem Amy Shamrow, Commissioner Colbert, and Commissioner Wilson be appointed to such committee with Commissioner Colbert as chair and Commissioner Wilson as secretary. Ooh, you got it twice in a row there.
Support.
There can be some sloppy notes.
Okay, we have a motion and support. You're getting all this right? Of course, it's already written. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
We're not changing anything, just to help out Sarah tonight.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have the Board of Zoning Appeals Ad Hoc Committee. Are we filling 2 slots or 4 slots?
2.
Just 2. Or looking at Douglas Donaldson and Ashley Thompson's seat, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
that's too
you.
bad we're losing Ashley.
All right, and see here, who wants to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendation regarding appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the seats expiring June 30th, 2026, currently held by Ashley Thompson and Douglas Donaldson, and that Commissioner Stanley, Commissioner Colbert, and Commissioner Treadwell, selected randomly, be appointed to such a committee with Commissioner Stanley as chair and Commissioner Colbert as secretary.
I'll second, but is there a reason we had to say selected randomly in that particular one?
Probably I just copied it from an old one.
Okay, fair. Just making sure there wasn't some
No.
legal thing we had to watch.
Because that
Okay.
means all the other ones they intentionally put.
Just be nice to me. I'll just keep
Just
drawing your
to
name
say-
right out of
Mark
the
does nothing, put them on these.
So oh, never mind.
What?
Okay.
Support if it wasn't already there.
I think I
The
did,
motion,
but
we have
it's-
She
support.
already
All
did.
those in
I
favor
was
say aye.
Aye.
All
I
those
knew I was
opposed say
mumbling.
nay.
I rushed through.
Next one's the Historic District Commission.
am I
See
again?
here, we have 2 folks on there, Andy Andrews and Eric
Mansouri.
Mansi.
Mansui.
Anyway,
I think I appointed
okay.
her.
I'll entertain a motion, please.
I move that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendation regarding 3 appointments to the Historic Districts Commission for the seats expiring June 30th, 2026, currently held by Andy Andres and Eric Mansu, and that Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow, Commissioner Stanley, and Commissioner Colbert be appointed to such committee with Commissioner Stanley as chair and Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow as secretary.
Support.
Okay, we got a motion to support.
The woman did
All
work.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. Next one is the City Commission Representative of the Recreational Authority. My term ended on June the 30th of 2023. We
let him
don't
get out
need
of
to
it.
go around picking somebody else up unless one of the other 3 who aren't running for a commission wants to take on this particular seat. You can have it, or I'll stick with it until,
November 10.
no, the
Yeah.
Maybe State passed at 10 o'clock. I got my second win.
We're going for another hour, guys.
Okay, Mayor
Never seen
Pumpkin.
this side of it. You
make-
didn't know it was going to happen.
There you go. It's your own fault. And meanwhile, as I have the table here and I have the chair and I haven't relinquished it yet, I've got the, I've got Lord of the Rings I'm going to start reading.
Ramble on.
Are you ready?
I'll make a motion that the mayor, Richard I. Lewis, be appointed to a term expiring June 30th, 2026 on the City of Traverse City and Charter Township of Garfield Recreational Authority Board of Directors.
Second.
Oh, I was only going to second if I found out what the I stood for.
Ivor.
What is it?
Ignatius.
Ignatius?
That's awesome.
Wrong. Anyway, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say.
Oh, God, we're losing it now. We're losing it.
All
Sanibel
those
season
opposed. Anyway, all right, you have your reports and announcements and correspondence. You have public comment. There is no reserved public comment. There's nobody general here to give us any comment. And the mayor and commissioners don't have anything more to say other than we thank United Airlines for the nice write-up that all those people got to read in the last month of June they flew all over the world with. So there you go.
And I wanted to thank our staff really quickly for being so agile and being able to react to our public very well, and they did great this last week. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Oh.
I was hoping to stall a little longer. I want to see it.
What is his middle name then?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I don't actually do, but thanks for reaching out to the state legislature for 4472.